Right here. You can sit down here by me. Bye.
Are you able to speak?
Okay, I have 6 p.m. I have 6 p.m. and I'd like to go ahead and call the regular monthly meeting of the Grayson County Board of Supervisors to order.
Recording in progress.
Mr. Smith, if I could, I would ask that give the invocation and lead the pledge. Please stand.
Father, thank you for the day that's been given. Thank you for the new year that we have to work for this great county that we live in, and for this new board that has come to serve. Thank you for the display of citizens that have an interest in what's going on in their county. Pray that you be with all of us through this year and bless our county. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would like to remind everybody of the quorum, which is same manner and order as any court proceeding or legislative body to hold in the state of Virginia. Next item on approval of the consent agenda. And if I could, I'd make one recommendation prior to approval of the agenda. And looking over our policy procedure last night, just this past evening, I noticed that during the public comment section, it would hinder us from taking public comment from individuals if we have this the waste or the Wednesday, Saturday trash collection discussion as an agenda item. And I'm very respectful of the number of people that are interested in this issue. I have come here to speak tonight. So as to, it would not hinder people from speaking points they may want to make on this particular issue. It would be my recommendation that that item be removed from the agenda tonight in order to allow these people to have their voice heard. And at that point, in saying that, I would entertain a motion on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Is items 1 through 5 also included in this, or we're going to do those separately?
Those would be consent agenda items.
So as part of this way. Okay. I would like to withdraw from the last. We're approving minutes of the last meeting, and I would like to withdraw my certification in closed meeting on the last meeting that we had when we went into closed session pursuant to code 2.2/3781. I just want to withdraw my consent on that meeting, if we could include that as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda with taking the Wednesday and Saturday trash collection out of the agenda so we can hear from our.
There was one other item that I failed to mention, that Mr. Sturgill will not be here to present on the item concerning the Bayward Tech Phase 1. And Mr. Shipley will be taking care of that presentation. I apologize for.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is, I think you got a motion on the floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Make sure I understand, since we don't have a second. We're removing the agenda item of the trash, but we're leaving the public comment portion where it is. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. And under some of the language contained under 6.3 of the Rules of Procedure, those it states that action, or that if there's a public comment on a particular item, there cannot be that the regarding any matter that is not on an agenda item and over which the board has influence. And then goes on further to state that this period should not be used to request specific board action in which they may speak. And there may be a point after public comment that one of the board members may wish to make a motion. And that would be appropriate, but I believe as the wording is on our rules of procedure, that will be in conflict with that.
So your intent is to hear the public comment, whatever it is on that or that issue or whatever other issue, but then out of that, then we can make a recommendation to staff or something to address whatever those concerns may be. Is that right?
That's correct. And I believe that affords people who have spent their time to come here tonight the opportunity to voice their opinion or their view or maybe recommendations. And then at that point will be more appropriate to do a better service to the citizens.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a first and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, also aye. So that the agenda is approved with the removal of the Wednesday trash collection from that as an agenda item. All right, thank you. First, under seeing no public hearing tonight, we will move to reports, presentations, or requests. First item is Robinson Farmer Cox Associates audit presentation by Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for having me here to go over the audit. I see you have a full house. You're probably pretty busy tonight, and I will try to keep it brief for you. But I want to give you some information, and I'm going to go over the full audit report and certain high points, the thicker report, and then I'll go through the handout. So if you want to hold on a second, I'll get there in a second. I do want to point out, though, on the thinner handout, my contact information on the very front. So if you have a question later on, feel free to reach out to me as far as the board goes. But moving to the audit report, the thicker report that is pretty hot off the press. Page 2, you have the independent auditor's report. This report is the opinion on the financial statements and refers mostly to the numbers presented in the audit report. So it's on page 2 of the thick report that has the full county. And the county again received an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. That means that the number presented in the report are show you accurate. So a very good report for the county there. Years ago, a good unmodified opinion or unqualified at the time was a 3-paragraph opinion, and now there are quite a few more paragraphs in this opinion. A couple of items you may see that are different this year. There was a change in accounting principles. The county implemented GASB 84, fiduciary activities. The larger impact of that, there was some change in verbiage for some of your smaller funds, like the ASAP fund and other funds like that. These activity funds were included in the school board expenditures in this report. That was the biggest change with that standard. We've audited those funds separately in the past, but they're now included in this report as well. So that's the biggest change with that. So pointing that out to you. There was also a restatement regarding correcting branch receivables. So a couple items there, but otherwise it's still a very clean, good report for the county. As I mentioned, the audit report is quite long now. You're only going to read part of it to get an idea of where the county stands. The management's discussion and analysis, starting on page 5, has some great comparative data. Runs through page 13, gives you a good summary of the financial position of the county. So I recommend reading that and then on. Looking over a couple highlights of the financial statements. Exhibit 1 on page 14. This is the statement of net position, or the balance sheet. And this exhibit 1 is the full accrual accounting. It includes everything for the county and the school board, all the assets, less all the related debt for net position across the bottom. As you can see, unrestricted amounts there across the bottom. The county has about $6.5 million of unrestricted net position to use as of June 30th, 2021. You may see a negative $14.5 million for the school board jump out at you. And that is because the state allocates a portion of the teacher pension liability. It's nothing that the school board has done wrong. They paid what VRS asked them to pay. It's just an allocation of that calculation from the state. Very common. Moving over to exhibit 3, page 16. This is also a balance sheet. This one's on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So it's almost like you zoom down a little bit to a little more detail. This is going to be your cash basis financials plus short-term accruals, less short-term payables to get you your fund balance. And fund balance is really what you use to budget with. It's the funds you have to budget with. You have your various funds, some of them restricted, some of them assigned by the board. And then you have your unassigned fund balance at the bottom, which is truly available to you all to use at your discretion. And the county has about $8.5 million there. All right, move over to exhibit 9, page 22. This is the third of 3 exhibits that include the PSA fund, but this is the statement of cash flows. And I think this is a very important exhibit when looking at how the PSA is operating on a profit or not. Towards the top, you'll see operating activities and net cash provided by. And so you'll see the PSA generated about $15,000 this year when you consider the receipts less the expenses. So kind of give you an idea of where that operates on a cash basis. All right, and then with that, I'm moving all the way to the back of the report, page 154. The whole lot of detail on the numbers and pension and OPEB data therein, but I'll move back to that report. On page 154, this is the gas report, or the opinion on the internal controls and compliance. We do have one item we've noted as a finding material weakness here. Is similar to prior years. As part of our audit, when we came in, we found certain accruals that we had to adjust. So as part of that, we proposed material adjustments and we had to report a finding to them. So we were able to use your records to get your finished statements materially correct, but we had to post some entries to do that. That's a similar finding to prior years. Moving over to page 156 and 157. This is the third opinion in the financial statements and the uniform guidance opinion. So this is on the federal testing that we've done. We did most of our testing this year related to the coronavirus relief fund. We do have one item reported this year. Unusual, usually the county has a very clean report for the federal testing. But we did have one reporting item we noted during that testing with coronavirus relief fund, which is a new program that they did not really have a lot of guidance for. You know, that money came out and the rules changed. They did the best they could. The state sent out a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet was sent out corrected. The state worked their way through this as well. But the end result was the county reported more expenditures than they actually had on the report to the state. So we just want to make sure that when you're submitting those reports, there's a review process, make sure that they're accurate. There's nothing wrong with the money you did spend. It was just a report to be sent to the state.
Hey, Scott, on that point, did that get resolved, or you're just making an observation that?
I don't know. You know, as we wrapped this up recently, I haven't had a chance to talk with Lisa to see if she corrected that final report. That final report would have been done in December. So she could have fixed it then, but I haven't had a chance to review that. And I don't know, the state was not allowing corrected reports for a period of time, and I don't know if they would allow a corrected final report or not.
So the observation is on an interim report on a new program that showed we had more expenditures than revenue. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
But it could have been, so it's something we need to pay attention to on the final report to see if, in fact, the left side equals the right side.
Essentially, yes. It's a matter of the state takes these reports and they compile them all together, and that's what they tell the federal government has been spent from this fund that the federal government gave to the state gave to the counties. So essentially, the amount you all told them you spent was more than you had spent. So I don't know if you all had a chance to get that fixed, or if they want you to send a corrected report, or what they need done with that. As far as I'm concerned, I want to point out the issue. I also want to make sure that there's a process in place to review reports similar, since you all have the ARC funds now, which will probably have similar reporting. So I just want to make sure that we have a good review process in place to prevent that.
Mr. Chairman, I think just for the record that if we could ask the administration to add that to the action items coming out of this meeting, just so we can get an update next month. Is that doable, Mr. Shepley, just to see if?
Absolutely, Supervisor Fenton and I, our finance director was prepared to discuss and answer these questions, but had a very significant family emergency occur in the last couple of hours. And she's not here with us, and so we will first check with her, but we will certainly do that, Supervisor Fenton.
Okay, well, if you all have got it worked out, then at the next meeting we can go over it again, I guess.
Okay.
That sounds great. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions on that? I'll move to the handout as well. It is a lot of information. I speak a lot of pages, so if you read through it and have questions, feel free to reach out. All right, moving to page 2 of this handout. I apologize, it's probably a little bit small on the screen up there, but it has 10-year trend information. So you kind of can see where certain revenues were from 2012 in comparison with 2021. Unfortunately, as one of the impacts of COVID-19 and all the wonderful funding that you all did receive, it skews this a little bit. So you'll see the total revenues increase compounded annually about 4.7% over that 10-year trend. If you take out the federal funds for the coronavirus relief money, it's about 3.6%, which pretty much mirrors the tax increase over that 10-year trend. So what that means to me is that your other revenues are holding steady, but you have to use the local tax base to fund the increase in revenues. Again, similarly, you see that operating expenses are increasing about 5.1% per year. If you remove the expenditures related to the COVID mitigation, it's down to about 3.7% per year. So something to consider when looking at those numbers. All that funding was great, but it did increase your numbers for 2021, both on the revenue and the expense side. So the net impact is a net, but it does increase both those numbers for this kind of calculation. So point that out to you. It was about $2.5 million of increase there in expenditures. It's based on that. And then across the bottom, you have your cash and investments. This number includes all of the cash. So some of your cash is setting the funds that you assign for a certain purpose or is in a restricted fund. So that includes the total of this. To give you an idea of where you stand and what that means, the next page has an analysis there for you. So on page 3, kind of in the peach color, and just above that, towards the middle, you'll see an unassigned fund balance. And unassigned fund balance is operating percentage of operating expenditures. Towards 2021, you'll see about $8.5 million, as I mentioned earlier. And that's about 21% there. So GFOA recommends, and GFOA is a national organization that gives a lot of financial guidance to a lot of government entities. They recommend at least 2 months, so it's a minimum of 2 months of unassigned fund balance. And so you all are above that. So that's a good spot to be. Now, that does not take into account items that you may have thought about a capital project, but not put it in a capital project fund. It also doesn't take into account your second half collection. It doesn't take into account things like that for various localities, but it does give you a broad rule. So it gives you something to go by. I think you're in a good position right there. Could be a little bit higher, but pretty strong. And in fact, it probably is a little bit higher because your expenditures were increased because of using that code. Pretty strong position, good improvement over the last few years. Want to point out, looking at the school board expenditures over that 10-year period, there's been pretty much no increase over that time frame. And I know their 2021 expenditures were also a little bit higher actually because they did have some improvements to the schools using federal funds for them. But something to consider. You see how flat that was, and you can expect increases in expenses for the school board as well as the county, just based on inflation going forward. But to summarize that, the county's in good position this year and a couple of years improvement, so that was good. Moving over to page 4, the debt summary. I want to point out this debt summary includes more than just your bonded debt. So you have the debt payments that you have to make. This also includes your financial debt. So the net pension liability of the IRS, a financial liability that does not have a amortized payment you have to pay. So also includes the accrued sick leave, accrued vacation leave of the employees, of financial liabilities. I do that because when you're comparing to the APA, that's how they report it as well. So you're comparing apples to apples that way. But as you can see right in the middle there in the blue, the county's debt per capita is about $2,691. The state average number is reported a year behind. So that's why the same number from 2020 to 2021. But you're well below that. So that's good. Good spot to be. The state average does include the Northern Virginia localities, so it would be quite a bit higher, but to be well below that's a good place to be. Moving over to page 5. Page 5, you can see quite a little bit of change in your personal property valuations, machinery and tools up and down there. So overall, the total assessment has been pretty flat based on the real estate being flat over the period of time. I was just talking with the commissioner, and it sounds like you might have some changes in assessment value coming soon. So I know a lot of localities are seeing that with the current cost changes. So, but as we talked about how important this is, your overall revenue line has been driven based on your local. Make sure you're watching those items. Page 6. This is a chart on the trend information. Just give you a little visual of that trend we talked about. On page 7, you have 2 pie charts here. One shows you where your funds come from and where they're going, essentially, and almost half of the county's money has come from property taxes. So it gives you, so you can see how dependent you are on the local economy. I think you'll see that 33% is intergovernmental or state and federal revenues. I think you may see those continue to grow for another year or 2, and then they'll probably peel back. Generally, when they go through a period of recovery like this, there's a lot of funds flowing, and then they peel back, and you got to rely on local money even more. So there's something to consider as you walk through those times. There's a whole pages of charts there, the same information we talked about. On page 8, you can see the fund balance hitting a lower point there in 2019, but still up from 2012. But you can see where it is in 2021. It's a much better trajectory there. Page 9. Page 9 is the VRS net pension liability. And this shows a sensitivity analysis towards the bottom of this page here. The amount reported in your financial statements is in the middle column. VRS assumes 6.75%. It's going to be earned on the money they have set aside for you. You can see how much of an estimate it is. The actuaries do a lot of calculations based on all kinds of data. But if they earn more than they think they're going to earn, it comes way down. It's actually reported a year behind too. So these numbers were measured as of 2020 as the standards allow. But during FY 2021, VRS made 30%. VRS had a fantastic year in investments in 2021. So I think you'll see these numbers coming down in the next few years. But I want to point out that this is a number in your financial statements. It's a big estimate. There's nothing you all done wrong. You pay what VRS asks you to pay. It's a difference between what they thought they're going to make in the market, what they didn't make, or they didn't tell you to pay them, essentially. The different years too. So it's a big estimate. It's nothing you all done wrong, but it is reported in financial statements. Very similar, a little bit smaller numbers on page 10. This is the OPEB. The health insurance OPEB, the county actually hires that actuary, but they're a very reputable firm, providing a very similar calculation. So again, the numbers are reported in the financial statements are the middle column. And then the next 10 pages or so are some informational piece on upcoming standards. The largest standard coming is the lease standard. If you're familiar with private accounting, there's been a big change in how you handle lease agreements. It's coming to the governments now as well. If you're leasing a building to rent it, you will now show that as a liability that you have the obligation to make those payments for rental. You will also show a deferred outflow asset as a right to use that building. So no real impact to the bottom line, but it will be a lot of calculation. At that point, I would go ahead and, at this point actually, I'll go ahead and recommend that the administration here start working on getting a list of those kinds of leases that you all have set aside so we can make sure that we get that accounted for correctly. All right, on page 21 and 22, we're required to do reporting to VRS based on testing of what's in there for retirement, salaries and dates, hire dates, to make sure that the numbers they're using for the calculations are accurate. During our testing, we didn't have any issues, so clear report there for both the county and the school board. All right, and then on page 23, starts our pages of recommendations. Some of these items maybe have been verbally discussed previously, and in the process of wrapping up the audit, they weren't necessarily done. So there may be a few more than you've seen there. Some of them are accounting maintenance items that I think that probably have to go hand in hand. Some of them, once you clean up one issue, it will take care of the other issue. So there are a few items there didn't really plan to go over them all in detail. If you have any questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer them. There is a large section on the pool revenue and recreation. I did go down there with the treasurer this year and looked at the actual operations and made some further recommendations there. So I know there were some changes made after you're into that. So hopefully we'll see some improvement there next year. My understanding those changes. I do look over to any questions you all have.
See about understood directly. You said if we lease property that's considered a liability now. Like so, if we own the county owns the building, leases that out.
So if you own the building and you're leasing it to somebody else, then you have the receivable. So you have the asset. So you'll show a receivable, and the company will show a liability essentially. So. And vice versa, if the county rented a building for a 5-year lease, you would show that 5-year total payments, net present value at all.
Mr. Chairman, I got one question.
Go ahead.
Scott, I heard what you were saying about the fund balance. It sounded like we were in better shape, but I missed what the figure was. I don't have the documents in front of me, unfortunately. And so I think last year we were at 18. We set a goal to get to 20. What did we come out at?
You hit 20. You were 21.1.
Okay, great. All right, that is good. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay. The last few pages of this are a letter to kind of summarize all the things we discussed. It talks about the new standard and some typical estimates you all have in your financial statements, and then the overall process of the audit. In a challenging year, our staff worked through safety protocols, and the county had safety protocols and did the best we could. And I really appreciate the staff of the county and the school board services all uploaded files to us. That helped us a lot. And then when we showed up on site, everything was ready. So we did the best we could. It was quite challenging with all the federal funds to audit. I can't imagine to be on your side of trying to make sure your clients spending money as the rules are changing. It's very challenging. At least we were able to look at it after they finalized the rules. But unfortunately, that was challenging to give advice and for you all to operate for sure. So very challenging year, but the county is in a better position. So that's great. I think that there's a few items we noted in those recommendations, but I think that the changes can be made. So, overall, a good year, I think, considered.
Well, thanks to staff.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Scott and his team, because one of the reasons that we are in this financial situation is the strong partnership we have with your organization and your ability to help teach us and help us to make these corrections that have gotten us to this point. We appreciate it very much.
I appreciate that. We view it as a partnership, and if we can help you, it helps us. So.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you all. If you have questions later on, feel free to reach out. Thank you all.
Next on the agenda, I have the Emergency Services Commission request. Mr. Philip Adams, EMS Captain, Rugby, Fire, Rescue, and Chair of the EMS Commission, Emergency Service Commission. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all for having us here tonight. Or are you just going to click through? You may tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll try to keep up with you.
Right.
If you need me to move next, just tell me.
Good afternoon. We just want to thank y'all for allowing us to speak tonight. My name's Philip Adams. Brian Billings is here also on behalf of the Grayson County Emergency Services Commission. We'd like to make notes or y'all seen on the way in. We have plenty of support here tonight, outside and in here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some issues, some concerns, and some possible solutions for emergency services. So some definitions, some stuff would be abbreviated throughout the PowerPoint. just ALS, BLS stuff, EVTC, Qrb, ATL, if you're familiar with that, that's just funding that comes down from the state for fire departments. For life comes down through the state, through the county, and that's for rescue squad. That's for equipment and training purposes. Next one. So what does all this mean? What's the purpose of Grayson County Emergency Services? So, you know, we respond to medical emergencies, structural wildland fires, vehicle farming accidents, water rescue searches, hazard materials, spills, and much more. And who's responding? We got volunteers, we got paid staff, we got a combination of volunteers and paid staff, firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics. So what does all this mean? When you call 911, somebody's going to respond. That's the whole purpose of emergency services. When you call 911, you want somebody to come and help you. So here, just shows the past 5 years calls for service in Grayson County. As you can see on the fire was unable to get the 2016-2017 numbers because Twin County 911, they switched their system, so we couldn't get those. But these are just calls within Grayson County. It excludes Gallatin's area. Fire department, you see, it's pretty even. Nothing much has changed throughout the last 5 years. Rescue squad, again, Als Staff, we couldn't get those numbers because of that. But everything's fairly stayed even the last 5 years, besides Als, Grayson, Baywood, and Independence. Of course, you see in 2019, 2020, Als, Grayson started dropping off how much they ran in Grayson County. But at the same time, Baywood started increasing, and therefore they did have paid staff in those 2 years. Independence, theirs has constantly went up for the last 5 years. They do inter-facility transports and returns. Baywood did do them for a short period of time, but they don't no longer do that. Next slide. So some things we'll be discussing tonight: equitable funding for Grayson County Emergency Services, potential funding for Als staff in east, mid, and western parts of Grayson County. Funding the road for a rotation of 1 fire engine and ambulance per year for fire and EMS. Reassessing contracts and agreements for emergency services, and some ideals for recruitment, retention, and representation. So, this just shows agency funded from Grayson County, the taxpayer dollars. Again, this is not including the ATL or for life, because that just passes through the county. So if you can see here, the last 5 years, it has increased a little bit. You do see down here where, so Independence Fire gets right now fiscal year 2021, $3,000. But if you're going down like Freeze Fire and Rescue, they're combined. So therefore they get $3,000 for fire and $3,000 for rescue. If you go on down, Baywood, you can see 19 and 20, there's money went up, and that's because the county was assisting Baywood in payroll. Gallatin's Fire, again, they went up past 5 years a little bit, but they're still 8 times higher than any other fire department in the county, received by the city funding in the county. Als Grayson, as you can see, their funding changes year by year. Still 11 to sometimes 50% higher than any other rescue squad in the county. Next slide. Okay. This here just kind of a breakdown of fiscal year 2020 to 2021 versus the call volume for 2020. Again, just shows the 3,000 for rescue, and then if you're combined, you get 6,000. Again, it just kind of breaks down the call volume, and it kind of shows you what each call averages out per dollar there. So the Independence Fire and county's funding of 3,000 gets them $23 per call. Independence Rescue, $3 per call. And you see as it goes down through there. Next slide. This just shows what agencies are paid in Grayson County. Als Grayson are funded by Grayson County, the ones that are paid. Als Grayson EMS, Als Fire, Baywood, Independence Rescue, and Elk Creek Rescue. Then the rest of the agencies are just solely operate on volunteers only, and that's Freeze, Independence Fire, and Elk Creek Fire, Troutdale Regional, and Mount Rogers. What's the purpose of an ALS? For funding an ALS quick response. So we want to get medical trained personnel on the scene quicker. As we know, Grayson County is a very rural area. It takes time for volunteers to get from their house to the station and then to the scene. And if we have a QRB, it just will help get somebody medically trained there and help us treat patients quicker. Always ensuring ALS is available. Meeting the designated emergency response agency standards. This is something that in 2015, all rescue squad signed. It was required by the state. It just states that we will be on scene. We come up with the time limit, and that's 30 minutes from dispatch to on scene. We got to meet that 90% of the time, and that's just in our primary coverage area. Relieving the strain on volunteer agencies. People now, they don't work in the county much anymore. Are outside for employment. Some of us is working 2 jobs, so we just don't have time to volunteer like we once did. Increase revenue for agencies through billing. So right now, some agencies don't have enough people to make a full staff on ambulance, and so if we had a QRB that could assist them in staffing that, and that's just going to help their revenue go up through billing. And then keeping volunteerism alive. If we help relieve the strain on volunteers, and it's just going to help prevent burnout, which is one of the number of leading causes and losing volunteers. So funding for ALS staff QRB, this is kind of what we're proposing. One station in the eastern area of the county. It's a be a QRB Monday through Friday, 12 hours a day. Be staffed at QRB. May have to be moved around, see what works the best. Having an ALS person staff funded by the county in Independence, we don't see that QRB in Independence is going to be beneficial. They already have 2 ambulances now staffed, which really benefits. But we do feel that, you know, if the county, we're paying 60 hours a week for a QRB, is we suggest pay 60 hours a week for an employee to help staff those ambulances. And that relieves some strain there. ALS West, again, just be stationed in the Rugby area, and it would respond to assist Rugby truck down that Rogers area. Again, same schedule as all the other 3, 5 days a week, and 12 hours daily. All right, so cost for an ALS staff. Oh, no. Okay. Qrb Startup Cost. Back up one, Carl. Okay, there you go. So Qrb Startup Costs. So purchasing or leasing 2 all-wheel drive QRVs. We're going to have something to respond in. Equipping those QRVs to meet Virginia Office of EMS regulations. They do set what you have to have on those trucks. Purchase of a Lifepak cardiac monitor. This is just one of the biggest purchases besides the QRV we'd have to have. Of course, ALS supplies, some staffing, uniforms, and then hiring an EVTC, which for emergency vehicle maintenance. So this is someone that works on emergency vehicles and has a certification to do that. It just ensures that if there is an accident, this vehicle was serviced by licensed professional. Nothing against anybody local, but when you're doing emergency vehicles, they're a different animal. So next line, cost for ALS staff. Right, we figured this is on part-time staffing here. If we end up considering full-time, probably increase that number by a third for insurance and retirement and such. Early rate 22, and then there's your weekly, annually, and total for 3 people per year. At the same time, we want to hire within Grayson County. You know, there's plenty of providers to meet this need here in Grayson County. QRV costs, do have quotes on all those that was provided, should be in your packet. This is a fully equipped QRV. It's a 2022 Ford Explorer all-wheel drive. That's fully ready to go besides the supplies needed. Just Lifepak, it's one that, like I said, again, the biggest purchase. That's around $33,000 there. And total cost you a little about $90,000 for one QRV. We're looking at 2 of those. Effects of not funding the QRVs, agencies closing the doors. But prior to having this happen, it wasn't for county stepping in and helping out in Baywood area. And we also have others that's not far behind. Putting strain on other agencies by increasing their call volume, response time, and increased uncovered primary coverage area. So if we're having to respond to other people's areas because they can't get the ambulance out, then we're leaving our area uncovered. And it's not good for the citizens there in that area. Loss of community-based emergency services and individual agency identification. We want to keep these agencies alive. We're not looking to get rid of any. We want to keep them alive and keep an ambulance and all that in their area at all times. Costing Grayson County taxpayers more to provide the same services volunteers were. If we lose them, it's going to cost a lot more to staff ambulances throughout the county. And then it is going to be just to help with these QRBs. And we feel like this is the best way right now to help struggling agencies. That's all I've got right now. Brian Billings is going to finish up the presentation. If you have any questions during any of this, feel free to ask.
Good evening. I'm Brian Billings. I'm the chief at Elk Creek Fire. We're going to talk a little bit about the rotational funding of apparatus on an annual basis. Basically, this would be the county looking at purchasing a new fire apparatus and a new ambulance once per year and rotating through each department or squad on an annual basis. You see some of the benefits of doing the rotation. It's going to relieve the financial strain on the agencies. You guys know this stuff's not cheap. I mean, you know, you're looking at fire trucks at a minimum of $500,000 and ambulances probably in the $200,000 to $300,000 range right now. So you have to sell a lot of hot dogs to buy a fire truck right now. It lets us upgrade our equipment. I don't know if the board is familiar with some of the NFPA standards, but the NFPA standards state that a 25-year-old fire truck has to be put out of service to maintain the standard. The standard is a recommendation, it's not a requirement. Elk Creek just bought two 25-year-old trucks that are in outstanding shape, but we bought them because a larger department took them out of service so they could meet the standard. So we're not afraid of them. They're in good serviceable shape and they'll last us for a long time, but they don't meet the NFPA standard. Of course, it's going to decrease your maintenance costs, obviously, especially the ambulances. These folks that are running a lot of transports and stuff, they're wearing out equipment in a hurry. So you see a big decrease in maintenance costs. It's going to support the agencies and it's going to relieve them of the constant need for fundraising. I tell new members when they start, you're going to spend a lot more time raising money than you are squirting water. That's just a fact of life. And that's probably 10 or 15 to 1 time-wise, the amount spent on fundraising versus running costs. And it's going to free up some of those funds to allow agencies to purchase other equipment, upgrade some of the auxiliary equipment. And it would also give the county an opportunity to standardize apparatus across the board. So whether you're making a deal with an ambulance company or a fire apparatus dealer, you know, you say, okay, we're going to buy a truck a year for the next X number of years. Financially, you may get a better deal, but at the same time, it lets us standardize across the agencies. And when we're all running mutual aid, you know, we know what equipment the other departments are bringing to us. So this is just an example. It's just something we put on paper as an illustration. Basically, you would rotate through one department per year and one rescue squad per year. And then when you finish, start all over. One of the things that we feel like we need to look at when we talk about equitable funding is the reassessments of some of the agreements and contracts that the county currently has in place. And to be quite honest with you, we haven't gotten a lot of information. We've asked a lot of questions, so we're making it official here tonight. We're asking what the agreement with Galax Grayson Ambulance Service contains. You guys saw the money that was going in that direction. And best of my knowledge, this agreement was put in place literally decades ago when Galax Grayson was the only paid service around, and that was to provide, my assumption is that was to provide service on the southeast side of the county. At the time, I believe the rest of the county was probably all volunteer. So, and big difference in the funding that's going down that way. So we just have some questions here. We would like to get this out on the table and look at it. And let's bring it to 2022, where we have multiple paid agencies in the county now. And as Philip just mentioned a while ago, we've seen the call volume drop with Galax Grayson and increase with Baywood. So we just need to take a look at this and make sure that the money that's being spent is going to the right place. You know, is it back one, Carl? Just sorry. We want to know, you know, is it per call? And what's the formula that the county is using to fund Galax Grayson? And what are the specific areas that are benefiting from this agreement? Literally the geographical areas that are benefiting from this agreement. Likewise, the contract with Galax Fire Department. Obviously, once you cross the river, there's no coverage for a fire department, and Galax covers that. And we don't know what the formula is there. That was about $24,000 a year. We were discussing that the other night, and to me it seemed like an awful round number. So it's not a per call basis. So those are just questions that we have. Does it need to be on a per call basis? Is it better off being a flat fee? You know, there are a lot of things for you folks to consider, and we're just bringing this up for discussion. One of the things that's very, very important to emergency service in this county is recruitment and retention. It's been a problem. I've been on the fire department for 30 years, and we've been talking about it for 30 years. I don't know if we're ever going to come up with a perfect solution for it, but we've got to give it a try. If we're going to keep these agencies going, we've got to figure out a way how to recruit new members and how to retain the members that we have. And these are just some brainstorming ideas that we had. You know, we for our paid agencies, we've got to have competitive pay. Okay, if we're going to have paid agencies in the county, we can't have them going to Sparta or Wythe County for $1 more an hour. If we're going to provide that service, and we're obligated to provide that service to the citizens, we're going to have to be competitive. I think the next 2 or 3 bullet points you'll see there are a common theme of training. We need training in the county. We need EMT classes in the county to train our medical folks. We need firefighter classes within the county to train the firefighters. Right now, I don't know a lot about the medical side, but I can tell you that the Department of Fire Programs manages the training. And like every other state agency, they have a budget, and they're pretty tight with their budget. So we might see, for example, a Firefighter 1 class in Grayson County, if we're lucky, every 5 years. And when we get new members on that are willing to take a Firefighter 1 class, a 20-year-old, we just got a new member in Elk Creek a couple of weeks ago. He's 18 years old. He's ready to take a Firefighter 1. It's not a class rank. So how do I keep him interested when I say, okay, you can go and drag hose, but I'm sorry, you can't go in and work the fire. And those young bucks are the ones that we need to be sending into the fire now. So we've got to figure out a way to retain what we have and recruit more. We've talked multiple times about having classes available in the high school. I don't know the logistics of that between the Board of Supervisors and the school board, but you guys are the ones with the pocketbook, so we need to make it happen. That's the best way for us to have somebody ready to go when they turn 18 years old, right out of high school. And we talk about keeping our young people here. And there are a lot of young people now that are staying a lot more than there were 10 years ago, I believe. And if they're going to stay here and they're interested in serving the community, then we need to give them an opportunity to be trained. And there's no better way to train them than while they're in school. One of the things, a couple of proposals that we have, and we would like to have board presence, whether it's a member of the board or Mitch or Mr. Shepley in attendance at our commission meetings. We feel like that would be a good opportunity for you guys to stay up to speed on what's going on. And if that's not possible, we recommend at minimum that we can provide you with quarterly reports from the Emergency Services Commission so you'll know what's going on. We need to keep this interaction up between our two bodies so that we can keep this process moving forward. So one more time, what is the purpose of the Grayson County Emergency Services? It means when you call 911, someone will respond. We take that for granted. We take that for granted quite often, whether it's fire, rescue, police, or whatever it is. But those are 3 simple numbers to dial on the phone. It kicks a lot of stuff into gear. And it's important that the citizens have the confidence in us being able to respond in a reasonable amount of time. So what are the effects if we don't address some of these issues? What are going to be the effects? Well, it's going to be a delayed response, and it's going to be potential loss of life and loss of property. We're going to lose volunteers, and we're going to lose agencies. We came very, very close, and we're not out of the woods yet. So we're going to be at critical mass. We're not asking for the county to hand over $5 million a year. We're asking the county to work with us to address these issues moving forward. We appreciate your time. You know, we've made progress on this issue. 10 years ago, we had the Grayson County Emergency Services Association. It was just an unofficial loose net group of the captains and the chiefs, and we would get together every month or every other month and talk about how we could work better together. And then a couple of years ago, the board formalized that into the Grayson County Emergency Services Commission with appointed members. So you've shown us that you're concerned. You've shown us that you're serious about it. And I think in turn, we've also shown you that we're serious about it too. We submitted our strategic plan a few months ago. Obviously, that's something that's always fluid. We can change it on the go. But, you know, we appreciate your support. We look forward to discussing these issues with you and continuing to serve the citizens of the county. If you got any questions, we're glad to take them, and you're all always invited to our meetings.
Yeah, I know.
On this rotation trucks, and you got PLX fire, why would you even have PLX?
That's a good question. I asked the same question, Kenneth, when we were having this discussion, and I told him that would be the first question that was asked, and it was. And so that should be a big question mark, and that goes along with the contract with Galax Fire and with Galax Grayson. So that's something I believe that the county needs to understand. It's different for the town of Independence and Troutdale and Freeze because they're towns within a county. Galax being an independent city, so I don't know what the funding streams are, but I think we left it in there just so the question would be asked.
Oh, job.
Yeah. So Brian, would you tell us what the advantage would be of meeting the NFPA standard that you mentioned earlier? How would that benefit us?
I say it's a recommendation, but it's a standard put out for fire apparatus, fire equipment. It's National Fire Protection Association. So it's make sure that you have safe, modernized, and effective equipment. I'll give you an example of that. We bought, Elk Creek Fire Department bought new turnout gear in 2003 or 2004. The NFPA certification is good for 10 years on turnout gear. We might let a truck go out of NFPA compliance, but we won't let our gear, our personal protective gear, go out of NFPA compliance, because if one of my guys gets hurt in a fire, then the first thing the lawyer's going to do is show me how old that gear is. So they age this stuff out to make sure that you're not driving worn out equipment. That's what it amounts to. And in addition to that, those standards are referenced quite often in insurance companies. And there is an ISO standard. I think it's Insurance Services Officers or something, whatever that is. But anyway, that's a standard that most of your insurance agents can tell you about. And that has to do with the cost of your homeowner's policy based on the level of service that you can provide. And there's a lot of different things in that. And it references the NFPA standards in that as well. So they're safety recommendations, and to make sure that we have safe trucks and that we have serviceable trucks. I mentioned before, we just bought 2 that went out of standard. Larger departments up in the urban areas, we went up north to get those. Those were $400,000 and $500,000 trucks. And, you know, we bought them literally for pennies on the dollar. One of them, both of the trucks that we bought had less than 25,000 miles on them. So, you know, we're not buying worn out junk. We're buying trucks that just don't get used that often, but those departments replace them because they're out of standard. Is it feasible for a rural volunteer fire department to have, we've got 9 trucks in Elk Creek, okay? Am I going to go spend $5 million to bring all my trucks up to NFPA standards? No. I tell my guys all the time, we take care of them. We keep them maintained. We keep the records of them so we can prove that they've been serviced. And we worry more about their capability, not their age. It's not feasible. It's not feasible for a rural county to fund it, and it's not feasible for a rural fire department to try to raise money for it.
Okay. The next question, I noticed when you mentioned the fair and equitable funding through the GALAX Grayson, I sensed some frustration there. Can you tell me what avenues that you went to try to get that?
We've just been talking about that within the commission. I don't know where the contracts are. I'm sure they're in the courthouse somewhere. Don't know what it is. I would dare to say that it predates probably 99% of the people in this room, as far as your positions. I don't have a clue when it started. Some of the folks that have been on the squads for years and years might be able to tell you, but I suspect maybe back in the 80s or 90s. It needs to be looked at. Not frustrated. I'm just saying we need to get it out and look at it and make sure it needs to be up to 2022 standards, not 1982 standards.
In the EMT classes, do you have any more suggestions as far as how we could partner possibly with the school system?
I think we would probably need to get Paul involved with that and how we would do that. I don't know the avenue. I don't know what's required. You know, there's going to have to be money coming from somewhere to fund it. I suspect that will probably end up being the sticking point. I don't know if, I don't know if there's somebody already employed by the school system that can do it. It's going to have to be an outside person, and it's always a risk, so what if you hire somebody, you pay them whatever, $40,000, $50,000 a year to do the class, and you end up with 3 people in it. If that was a state class, if that was a fire class and 3 people signed up, they'd cancel it. So, those are just the issues that we need to work through.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. I appreciate everything you guys do.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I got a couple questions.
Absolutely. Where you been, John?
I'm on vacation. That's why I'm zooming in. They may be more directed at Philip, but thanks for both you and Philip for bringing this stuff to us. I'm trying to wrap my heads around the quick reaction force that you're recommending as it relates to the capabilities that already exist in our volunteer departments. And so if we're talking about spending money on additional vehicles and paying people to man those vehicles, what is the impact on our volunteer service folks? And is there not capability that resides from an equipment standpoint that already exists that could potentially be the QRB if in fact we fund the ALS? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, there's always a risk when you put these QRVs in place that, now we have somebody paid to our volunteer seat. Well, there's somebody paid. I'm not going to run. I'm not get paid. It's a risk you take, but it's also a risk not to do anything. We already got one department being heavily funded from the county for payroll. We've got others very close behind. So, there's risk either way, but, I'd rather take the risk of actually doing something and then not do something, so is it 100% solution? Probably not, but it's at least some solution. You never know until you try it. So QRV, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the QRV doesn't bring you any carrying capacity for patients, right? You're just getting there to take care of the initial problem until the cavalry shows up? Is that kind of the concept?
Yes, but also going with that ambulance. So, the QRVs can respond upon dispatch. Of course, volunteers take a little bit of time to get to the station. That's just how it is. And then, they can meet them on scene and make a full crew. So, if a basic shows up at the station, gets ambulance and meets them on scene, then there's a full crew, an ALS full crew. So not that QRVs wouldn't be going to the hospital with ambulance. That's what we intend for them to do. They may not be needed, and that volunteer squad may have a full crew, but again, they may not, and they may have a full crew just BLS and require that ALS. So, and does QRV always have to respond first? No, they could, respond if they're at one of the stations. They could bring the ambulance and meet them on scene with a basic or another provider. So, we're not saying that the QRV people would not go to the hospital. That's the full intent, is to make a full crew with these ambulances and upgrade them from BLS to ALS if that need arises.
Okay. I guess back to Brian now. On your apparatus rotation plan, what you're talking about is really a procurement plan for equipment that rotates through the different agencies. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah. There would be one fire truck per year, one ambulance per year. I think West County had a similar program for I don't know if it's in effect now, but they have had a similar program.
Okay, and I guess the final, maybe an observation that I would ask the commission to go back and look. I think, several months ago, members of the different departments, agencies in the Western End came and talked about the short-term problem of reliable communications in the West. And of course, I know we're looking at a replacement communication system that would be countywide and would be part of the Carol Grayson Galax organization, but there's a short-term response requirement related to communications. Does the commission have any recommendations, thoughts on how to go about solving that short-term problem as we try to figure out how we're going to fund a long-term solution?
I'm not sure on that. Gary Hash and Paul, I know, have been working with Jolena on that, the 911 coordinator. And I think, John, one of the issues is going to be, are we throwing good money after bad with what we have? There's going to come a point, I think, that what we have is outdated and it's not going to be fixable. But we are getting close to the point where something's going to have to be done on communications in the county. So that will continue to be a hot topic. And if you sat down and polled the individual captains and chiefs, I dare say that would probably be at the top of the list. We understand that everything that we've talked about here tonight is not, it's a wish list. We know we're not going to get everything that we ask for, but it's our responsibility as a commission to put these out on the table for the consideration of the board, and then the board to work with us to do what's best we can.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, as you closed, it's one thing for you all to have the ability to respond, but if no one can get a hold of you, then it's interesting, but not, it's no longer relevant, and so it's really a capability both from a communication and a deployment standpoint. And so I would ask that the commission, everything you all put on the table tonight is all accurate and necessary for us to figure out, but it falls into the budget world. I would ask that you add the short and long-term communication problem to those recommendations so that we can address it as we head into budget season starting in next month. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I know there's a lot of work already been done and being done every day on that. I think we're to the point where we're starting to get some quotes and some estimates on what it would take to improve that system. It's not cheap, and if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. So those wheels are already in motion, and point well taken, and we'll make sure that we discuss that in our next meeting.
Yeah, thanks for both y'all and everybody that came that I can't see, but thanks for everybody for bringing this and putting it on the table in a formal manner, because that's how we keep the fire moving.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Billings, I think Mr. Shepley.
Yeah, thank you all for all that you guys do. You guys are unsung heroes throughout the nation, and we appreciate it very much. Doesn't NFPA standard help you with grants too?
That's the NFPA is just a standard. The grant that we get is the AFG grant assistance for firefighters grant, so it's completely separate. NFPA is not. I don't think it's a government. It's not even a government agency. It's a standards agency.
I was just thinking with the grant agencies, wouldn't they look highly on you being?
They do. They absolutely do.
So that's another benefit that.
But the thing is that they do, and that's one of the things that when we write grants, when we're writing the narrative, the first thing we bring up, like when we got our AirPack grant in Elk Creek, was that our AirPacks are out of date.
Okay.
When we got our turnout gear grant, the first thing we said was our turnout gear is out of date. Okay, that's whatever, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 to outfit a department, right? Okay, everybody in the United States says my truck is out of date. I want $1 million. And there's just not enough millions to go around. But you're exactly right. That is one of the main criteria for during the grant review process.
Thank you. Doesn't always work. Very good. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. We certainly do appreciate everything you all did for the community.
And next on the agenda.
And Mr. Chairman, on one point on that, sorry, if I may, Brian and them hit on the point that the communication thing's being worked, but I know several months ago this was brought up, and we, of all the things that they discussed, I think the more immediate thing is this issue of the short-term Band-Aid, if we will, for the communications issue in the Western End. And so if we could, Ms. Shepley and Mr. Chairman, maybe add that to the agenda in February as well, because we really have to get that. It's a no-fail mission. There's an expectation, as Brian and Phil laid out, that when they call, somebody's going to show up. And right now we've got a problem with people being able to effectively communicate. Really, I think not so much from the injured person or the concerned person to 911, but it's from the 911 place to the agencies in the Western End. And that we really need to get some clarity and some updated information on some movement on that specific short-term issue as we struggle with the long-term answer.
We'll do it, Supervisor Fan.
And Mr. Fan, we can also recognize that the Twin County 911 radio project, and there's an update by Mr. Cole and Mr. Bergeron tonight. So there may be some points in that presentation that will give some clarity.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm tracking on that. I went through it, and I think we're doing good on the long-term side. I just didn't get much out of that particular point, but you're right. We can address it with them when they come up. Thank you. Sorry about
that. Okay. Next on the agenda is Pearson's Appraisal Service Update. Mr. Larry Bolt, Commissioner of Revenue, extension request.
See what?
Part of your presentation, Mr. Jeff Hayes.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. As you know, we're finishing up the reassessment with Pearson's Appraisal Services, and technically the reassessment was supposed to be all wrapped up done by December 31st, 2021. There's a section of the state code that says that an extension of 90 days may be granted for just cause to finish that work. The work didn't get finished, and we have some reasons for just cause. Just to go over a couple of them with you, there was some computer issues that led to a delay with our real estate program. There was supply chain issues, believe it or not, of them trying to find enough envelopes to mail out the notices in. And it got down, it was basically coming too close to Christmas. There's sort of a fine line when you finish these things up about sending out notices. You don't want to do it before you send out the tax bills. So the regular 2021 tax bills is due December 6th. So December 5th is December 6th this year. So you sort of want to wait after that, or that just leads to a whole lot of confusion. So then you go over that, you're right about that second week in December. And if you get it done in, or if you don't, you get too close to Christmas, and right before Christmas, everybody gets their notices and their values, and then you start the appeals process, dealing around the Christmas holiday. It's just better to put off it and do an extension and put it off till the new year. Now, this is nothing unusual. I've been here a while, just let you know. But I went back looking at the reassessment that was done in 2002, 2006, 2010, and 2016. In other words, the last 4 reassessments, we've all had an extension. So it's nothing unusual, it's sort of become the norm. Now, what needs to be done tonight? In order for this to happen, there needs to be a motion by one of the board members that says basically that the Board of Supervisors directs the county attorney to petition the court to grant an extension of time as allowed to state that. Now, the county attorney already has all the paperwork. Basically, he just needs the motion for you all to put it into play, approve motion, and then he'll get the paperwork to the judge, and if it's signed, put on record, that will be granted. We did that. Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I got one.
Yes, sir. Mr. Frank, go ahead.
So Larry, what's the, if the extension is effective as of when? December 6th, or what's the effective date?
December 31st, and it's an automatic 90-day extension, so it gets you 3 months.
All right, so now we're talking 1 April. Is there, that information from the reassessment is going to drive what we do in the budget on setting the levy. And so is there any impact from your perspective on this delay on what our process is? Or maybe that's a better question for Mr. Shepley.
Well, if I take a stab at it, I don't think that's going to be, it's going to be completed by the time you all are in the budget sessions and saying, okay, how much money we need from real estate kind of deal. So that should be wrapped up good.
So no impact. Bill, anything?
I think it'll have a minor, it'll have an impact, but I think it'll be relatively minor.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Any other board members? Chairman, entertaining a motion.
Can I say one thing? Yes. Technically, I think under your agenda, it shows up under that new business later on, but there's nothing wrong with doing it right now.
Why are you going home?
I did not say that.
I'll make a motion that we extend, give the extension, turn the information over to the attorney so we can.
Have a motion to have a second. Second. Have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Aye also. Passes by unanimous.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Now, actually, I'm not sitting down because next on your agenda says Jeff Hayden from Pearson's Appraisal Group. Well, Jeff's not going to be able to be here tonight. Actually, he tested positive, something, and so it wasn't safe for him to come tonight. Now, I am not taking his place, okay? Because he was going to do a whole presentation on how a lot of numbers came together and how they came to the numbers, and that's the professionals, and that's why we hired them back. So I'm not trying to take his place, but if you would like, I will try to go through some things and try to answer some questions to the best that I know to sort of help us all understand this. Is that okay?
Any objection by members?
Mr. Chairman, just a thought is if we've given them a 90-day delay and now there's not a real rush and the appraiser is not or assessor is not here, any reason to not just move this to February?
Well, I think actually you'll need to move to February for him to be here, you know, but I think actually for some information purposes, it would be good if I was able to continue just a couple minutes.
I'm good with that.
And I know in your board package, you got some info that was to help you with some of this information. So, and I'll go over part of that. The notices, the reassessment notices are going to be mailed out by January 18th. January 18th is next Tuesday. So this is, yeah, we're right here at that. Now, on the reassessment notice, and I have a template of one here. I don't have an actual thing, just a template that they use. It's going to look the same for you all, the ones you get, for everybody gets. And the first thing it's going to say up at the top of it that's highlighted is, this is not a tax bill. And that's one thing that everybody, this is just a notice of possible change in your assessment of value for 2022. It's not a bill. But on this notice, it's going to have the prior 2 years of old values. So it'll have the 2020 value of your land, your buildings, the total, what the levy was, what the taxes was. It'll have the 2021 version as well. So you look at 2 past years, and then it'll have the new 2022 values on there, and the same way. And one little sort of point that this needs for some understanding, on the 2022, it'll have the new values, and then there's a place out there that says tax rate. And you all know there's 2 parts to the tax bill, it's the value and the tax rate. And these are the new values coming in, and then you all set the tax rate, and that's usually done in June. Now there's a section of code that says that they have to put the current tax rate on there. So when you see that, it's going to say the 2022 tax rate 59 cents. It's going to be highlighted in a little asterisk, and it's going to explain. It says this is based on the 2021 tax rate and is subject to change. The 2022 newest assessment value will be applied to the tax rate as set by the Board of Supervisors probably in June of 2022. Okay, so the main thing, if somebody's value is going up, we don't necessarily want them to apply that old rate. So, well, my tax bill is going way up. Because that's not necessarily the case. That won't be known until the rate is set. That's what makes it. And as I'm going through, if you got a question, feel free to stop me because that's fine with me. Now, also on the notices, if people get their notices and you don't necessarily agree with them, so you want to file an appeal. There's essentially 3 ways to appeal the reassessment. The first way is to contact the company that provided the work, Pearson's, to talk it over with them. And that's what I would suggest everyone do. If you're not happy or you don't understand how yours is, contact them. There's 4 ways to contact them. The first way, you can do it in writing and actually put it in mail and mail in the letter and explain what you're talking about. The second way, you can do it in writing by email. And on your notice, there's going to be an email address that you can do that. The third way you can do it is by telephone. And there will probably be a lot of phone calls. One, with all the COVID issues going on, people can do that without having to come face to face. But also we have so many property owners that live outside of Grayson County. And just because someone lives in South Carolina, they don't have to come all the way up here and meet face to face. Obviously they can't if they want to, but they can do it by telephone. And the fourth way, they can do it in person. So you can do it by writing, regular letter, by email, by phone, or in person. On the notices will be a couple of phone numbers to call to schedule an appointment if you would like to discuss it with Pearson's. And if you want a phone call or in person. And the first day for appointments is going to be January 24th, which is, as I said, the 18th, May 18th, which is next Tuesday, the 24th, the following Monday. And there's going to be appointments from January 24th to February the 18th. And those appointments will be held at the Gate Center. And it'll be probably starting, I'm not quite sure on this, either 8:30 or 9 o'clock and run to like 4 or 4:30 for the days that we have. So that's the general thing. How if you do not agree, you can discuss with Pearson's. And as I said, if anybody does not, I would strongly suggest that. And there's essentially 3 ways to appeal. That's number 1. Number 2 is taken into the Board of Equalization. Now, the Board of Equalization is made up of 5 Grayson County citizens, and this board will come into play after the appeals have gone through with Pearson's. And I believe right now there's been 3 members that's been appointed, and there needs to be 2 more appointed to get 5, and it generally comes from all areas of the county, and that may be on y'all's board appointments tonight, I'm not sure. But we need 2 rather quickly, actually. The third way that you can appeal your reassessment is to go through circuit court and basically plead your case in front of the judge. And truthfully, nobody hardly ever does that. Basically, to do options 1 and 2, talk to Pearson's directly. Still not satisfied, talk to Board of Equalization. You do not have to do one to do the other, but that's, you know, usually I always recommend do the first one, and then if you're still not, try the second. Okay, any questions? I'm going. Some other, and Carl, I think I've gone over pretty much all that right there. Go ahead and skip. The next things there, like that one is a 2021 of what all the values were. The next one should be, Carl, if you just go on up right now, the 2022, and you can sort of do the next one. That one, if you'll stick right there for a second, and I know that was handwritten, but it's pretty simple to make. If you'll go up a little bit, or no, well, go up to that bottom left-hand corner right there, where that total value, you can see what the 2021 value, that 1.6 billion, which is basically what we've had from 2016. And it's gone up for the preliminary numbers, has gone up to 1,903,870, or 9,903,971,400, an increase of 234 million, which is an overall 14% increase on taxable value of land in Grayson County in 2022. That is a lot. That is a lot. You all know what's going on, and like most everybody in this room does, what's happened with real estate sales, specifically one type that has been selling tremendously high, which is houses. And I bet everybody here can think of an example. It's not yours, your neighbor or somebody close to you that sold something for pretty good price. And all this is driven by market sales. So Carl, if you scroll back down, with their improvements, that's your improvements. That's where the houses are located. And improvements. And you all can read those numbers. The houses overall went up 32.9%. And that's obviously a really high number. The one on the right is just the land. You see the land only went up 2.6%. And basically a whole lot of people's land's going to stay the same. And yeah, I think there were certain areas, possibly maybe some along the river or stuff that went up, or certain sections there went up a little bit. But overall, basically the land's remained sort of level. The houses have jumped. Go back down, Carl. You see that there's a 14% overall. The one on the right is just the taxable and non-taxable together. It shows a 12.9, but really we're basically concerned with the taxes. So So we have a 14% increase overall. Yes.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the land value pretty much have stayed the same. So
pretty low increase.
If these adjustments in turn, we have to lower the levy to stay within the guidelines of not raising taxes. Large landowners in essence could see a cut in their taxes compared to last year.
Well, and one thing, you know, you guys will end up through the budget meetings deciding how much money needs to come in through real estate taxes. And off the 2021 numbers at 1.6 billion, that brought in roughly, I'm rounding just a shade here, but it brought in roughly $9.8 million of tax dollars. 9.8 million. That's what we've been bringing, that's what we brought in for 21. We're gonna have new numbers for 2022, and y'all get with budget things. You're going to say, okay, do we still need $9.8 million? Do we need more than 9.8 million? Do we need less than 9.8 million? Yeah. And I'm speaking just in past terms here. A lot of times boards in the past, they have adjusted the levy, and anytime if it was a big increase in values, a lot of times the levy came back down. And when the final numbers come in, and that dollar amount there, that 1.9 billion, that's what the numbers are right now before any appeals or anything with Pearson's. So, you know, they may be 500 people appeal their values, and just because you appeal to them doesn't necessarily there's going to be a change, but, you know, let's say 400 of them gets changed, you're going to see that number, if it comes down, that number could come down a little bit. But when you're talking about that large number, you know, it's still going to be very close to that. You know, anyway, it changed a whole lot of it. So you're still talking about 1.9 billion value. So when you know, so at the time in your budget, it's going to be figured out, well, what would the levy have to come down to show no tax increase? And it has to stay within 1% on that 9.8 million to not have a tax increase. Now, it could be above that. You all can obviously have the power to do that. You just have to have a public meeting, advertise it, basically have a tax increase. But so, you know, there's what you're saying is there's a possibility the levy comes down. So, for example, if somebody's got a house and lot, and their houses went up 30% in value, the land pretty much stayed the same. You know what they paid last year? If the levy comes down, depending on how much it comes down to, or whatever, you know, will be their new tax bill. Now, is there a scenario where the value of the house went up and the levy won't come down enough and somebody will pay more? Absolutely. I mean, that's a scenario right there. The scenario I think you was talking about, if somebody just had land and the land value stayed pretty much the same, right, you know, say $100,000 in land value, and it stayed pretty much the same, but the levy went down from 59 cents to something lower, then yes, they would pay less.
So in essence, large landowners could, if the levy does come down, like in this scenario, large landowners
and the values pretty much, and the value stayed the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the smaller landowners or the homeowners that have basically an acre or a lot, they're probably, if their land stays the same, the house values have gone up, so they're going to see an increase.
Depending on how much the levy comes down and how much theirs went up.
Right.
You know, my house may went up. You remember if you're talking about an average of, what was it, 32%, whatever, basically, you know, that means an average of that. I mean, some of them went up 50, some of them went up 10. So, you know, but if you're sitting there and my house went up 30, but yours only went up 10, then you may not see an increase. Somebody went up 50, you might. But, you know, when you're looking, as far as the tax increase for the whole county, you're looking at the big picture. it almost doesn't matter what you do, there's going to be some that's paid more than some. Just sort of natural.
So switching the topic just a little, in manufactured and detached homes, we've seen.
Yeah, Carl, if you go to the one that's got keep on.
You see that? Okay, that one. Okay.
Yeah, and basically what the top one there says manufactured homes, and that's double wides. And yeah, look what double wides have done these last 3 years. And specifically that 2021 is 24 sales and average sale price $125,000. Average sale price double wide. The detached homes, that means just regular houses. Okay. You see in 2018, the average sale price is $159 and 2021 is $213, almost $214,000. That shows like, you know, that jumped into the percentages there.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting and an interesting world. And like I said, I bet everybody's got some examples of those some people that sold something or some of you all did or whatever, especially housing. Yeah.
Mr. Shipley. Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Fant, the question that you asked me earlier about the impact that this might have on the budget, with this information, it's a tremendous possible impact, especially in changing not necessarily in the total, what the budget has as a total, but as to how we approach the budget. And, you know, so I'm trying to correct myself a little bit on that and say, obviously we need to look at
and I guess
all the options considering the increase that's occurring. And can
Bill, what I was kind of getting at is, you know, we're going to have an impact regardless of this report, you know, that we would have to consider. It's just whether or not the timing now, by delaying 90 days, given what we know and what was in the board packet, whether or not that was going to constrain the staffing time to be able to make those adjustments and those recommendations. You know? Yeah. So whatever happens on the staffing side is going to be impacted by this report. I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that it doesn't sound like, because by 1 April, we're really still at the beginning of the budget process. And with this information, you can kind of begin to do the process anyway. It probably doesn't have that significant, but there would be significant potential implications of this information.
I got you. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And that was pretty much what I was trying to say too, John. Would be an impact in terms of continuing on with your budget things. And actually, it's going to help you. You've got some new numbers now. And like I said, that 1.9 billion, it may change a little, but you know, it's not going to change to 1.5 billion. You know, when you're talking about that, you're going to be still around that 1.9 billion mark. So you've got something sort of to go by anyway. And when the last meetings are held, I think that date was February 18th. So then once Pearson's has all the meetings completed, then they make the final adjustments. So, you know, if that's February 18th, what I said, you know, by the end of February, we should have the final numbers. And then anything after that, it'd just be some small adjustments from Board of Equalization possibly, but nothing significant to change budget numbers.
I got you.
So even if I understand this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, even if we were to lower the levy, we still could have a small increase in tax revenue based on land taxes, even by lowering within that percentage.
Well, if y'all decide to lower the levy, you'll be able to figure out how much money you're coming in, and whether it's continued, as I said, 9.8 million, or you think you need more, you think you need less. So you're going to know that when you set the levy.
Our fourth financial forecast plan, we put that tax increase in place.
Well, and one thing on that financial forecast was done how many years ago?
Well, it's good for 5 years. I think we're in the third or fourth year. I think.
Yeah, and once you have a reassessment, that's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all that was based on those.
Still use the two.
All that was based on these same old values. So once you have the new values, though, because I think maybe, you know, this past year the forecast was to go up 2 cents, and the board decided to go up 1. And I think this next year maybe was, according to that, was 2 cents as well. But that was those old numbers. You're gonna have new numbers to work with. So that's, I mean, personally, me, that should not be considered at all. It's how much money you want to bring in. Now, if that financial forecast said that in 2 years from now, you need, instead of 9.8, you need to be bringing in, you know, whatever amount, then that's the kind of numbers you need to look at to make that adjustment. Good thing.
Do you have that figure there?
No, off the top of my head.
Now, use it in terms of not saying we'll automatically go up 2 cents,
no,
because you don't know what that means, but in terms of what they forecast as the county needs.
And they do. It does that.
They were the experts.
So I got excited over numbers and which thing. Because I was thinking we could decrease the levy, still have more revenue. That's a small increase.
I think that's possible.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean for that.
No, that's all right. I thought maybe I was going down a rabbit trail. That's okay.
I think that's possible.
But I would just say, you know, when everybody gets their notices, if you're not pleased with them, and as I said, you know, from what we've said, there's going to be a whole lot of people have an increase in house values. That doesn't mean everybody's got a house out there that's going to be up. There's going to be a lot that's going to see an increase in that. So, but here's a way, you know, and one explanation you're going to get is, you know, what the market is selling for. You know, and if you have an appointment with Pearson's or something to appeal yours, it's always better for the homeowner, landowner to have as much information as possible to bring to them. You know, if you just go in and say, I think mine's too high, you know, why? Well, it's too high, you know, and they're talking about how much they think they're going to have to pay. But if you've got, well, I had an appraisal done on it 6 months ago, look what this number was, or there may be something about that they didn't know how the interior of the house was, for example, because they did not go inside houses, and they didn't know something that didn't remodel, not remodeled, and the more information citizens can bring to them, the better off you are possibly getting some changes.
So when we send them, or the county sends out the packets to let them know the letters that there's been
actually Pearson's is doing that.
Does it mention in that letter, like, hey, if you decide to appeal, you know, bring supporting documentation? Is that part of their statement to the homeowners or landowners? And that would be significant if it was just a little bullet point.
I don't know if it technically says that or not. I'm not really seeing it right now.
Can we request to include that?
It's too late now. Oh. I mean, these things are all printed. As I said, they're getting mailed out at least by next Tuesday. I mean, that process, and they said they were hoping to get it out even this weekend, as possibly Friday, Saturday, and maybe some of them hit mailboxes.
That train man's at the station, but maybe Mr. Shipley put that on the website. Given their taxpayers.
And I think they're supposed to be sending some, maybe if you haven't received anything like press release, anything heavy. I think they're supposed to be sending like press release and get some info in the paper, get on the website, social media, that kind of deal. And now, if Jeff had been here, he would have been able to go into some details of how did that 14% come up, and how did the 32%, 33%, how they arrived at that. But this is just the final, but not completely final, but the numbers, preliminary numbers, which is going to be very close.
Mr. Chair, we're going to ask the income next one.
But we want to get ready to state, we could possibly ask if there's any further clarification.
And it would really be good, and he could get maybe some details of, okay. And actually by next month, he could sort of give you an update on how the hearings are going. You know, I mean, they've seen.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and do the 2020 comp plan update with Ms. Jay Black. And then we'll Chair probably going to take a motion for a brief recess.
Mr. Chairman, thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight, and just wanted to update our Board of Supervisors on the 2018 Comprehensive Plan. Is our action item update for the year of 2020. So as part of the ongoing work of the 2018 Comprehensive Plan, the Grayson County Planning Commission is tasked yearly with completing and submitting a report to the Board of Supervisors as to how the county is meeting the goals and strategies listed in the Comprehensive Plan. I have provided to you an annual report, should be in your board packet. It is fairly thick, and it was for the year 2020. In the past, we've kind of been lax on that. I know when we switched roles, personnel roles, it did not get done, so we're kind of behind. I'm trying to make up for that. So we'll continue to do this yearly. So as to help to facilitate the report, each department head submitted pertinent data. Once it was collected, it was compiled information, it was reviewed by the Planning Commission, was revised several times in several different meetings before the final version was passed along to you, board members. So the Planning Commission encouraged each department head to elaborate on how their departments met applicable goals and strategies. So even in this unparalleled year, county department heads and their staff still managed to meet goals and strategies within the comprehensive plan. So I give kudos to each one of them. As a continued effort by all, to work towards the common goals to improve each department's functions keeps us all moving forward to achieve our collective goals for Grayson County. Additionally, moving forward into 2022, the requirements of section 15.2-2230 of the Code of Virginia, the Planning Commission shall receive we have to review the comprehensive plan to determine whether it's advisable to amend the plan. So Grayson County Comprehensive Plan will be revised. It was revised and adopted in 2018. That making 2022 our 5-year marker. So the Planning Commission will continue to work throughout the year to go through each chapter, and we will review those individual chapters and determine whether or not we need to make adjustments, amendments towards those strategies and goals. And we will, if there are revisions or amendments, or the Board of Supervisors determines that we need to add certain strategies or goals to their comprehensive plan, then we, of course, will make those changes and present back to the board for readoption for the 5-year marker. Does that make sense? And does anybody have any questions about the report?
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll jump in there as usual.
All right, Mr. Frank.
Hats off for getting it back on board and putting the effort into it to kind of get it back on track. I know it ain't easy and it's hard. The one thing that I would suggest is that as we look at the approach on the evaluation, is that I think there needs to be some timing associated with the strategies. You know, some of them are going to be open-ended. I mean, that's the nature of the particular action item. But, you know, in the 2013 report, as you referenced, there is the priority tasks list, phase 1, or priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, that I think would be helpful to dust off and then apply to this 2018 and then the 2022 update. Because in that you begin to have the construct of a implementation plan, which is, I think, really the struggle that we have. Because right now the report it's really nice to read because everybody has contributed, but we're doing a lot of things right, but are we doing the right things is really the question. And so the prioritization of the tasks to achieve the strategy associated with the time frame will help add some rigidity to the reporting requirements that we need to be able to have a more robust evaluation of our comprehensive plan. The last thing I would say is just as you mentioned about new ideas. A couple of years ago, I think the federal government passed opportunity zones, and the opportunity zones from an economic development standpoint allow folks to invest capital gains from one place into these opportunity zones. And we have a pretty significant one in Grayson County. And so as we try to look at economic development as part of the comprehensive plan, that should be one of the strategies or evaluation criteria that could be added to your report. But thanks to you specifically and to the Planning Commission for the work you're doing on that. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I just have a question. You got one?
No.
I said you've got listed, you've got these things kind of broke down, and like bringing childcare to Grayson County, that's kind of something that's in the works or in the talk stages. And then under here, it says other accomplishments, providing high-tech education opportunities to our young people. Is that considered an accomplishment, or is that in the planning stage?
So anything that was provided to me come from, in this particular line items, we're talking about the school board or the administrator there. These things come from them, and they're the ones that determine whether or not they were pending, ongoing, or complete.
Okay, so the school board provided you information on the Baywood Technical Center? Is that what
no, now that is totally, that would be the administration side that provided that information to me.
So my question is, it says it's under accomplishment. So I was just wondering, should that be in the planning stages, or is that what's the accomplishment?
Okay, so can you tell me exactly where you're at in the education section?
It's
four. Is it 4-4? Okay. So that was our administrator's report.
Okay.
I apologize. So what happens is inside of this report, each department head gets it. And if there's additional information in that, then they submit their report to me, and I attach it to this particular report so that it's a little, it expands upon what might be here. So I will ask that maybe Mr. Shipley be able to answer that question. Can you help me there, sir?
It's interesting. It's kind of a mix. There's a, we've been meeting, we've got a team that's been meeting and moving the process forward for a couple of years. And we have, designated some tax money that passed through the board to dedicate to it, but it's not done. So I guess that's a good point. It's to say it's an accomplishment when it's not done. You're probably,
well,
I think that's a legitimate point.
I thought it was a little misleading. So we would just be fair to say agree to disagree, but it's in the planning stage.
It is in the planning stage.
Yeah. Not that it won't be, but okay. I was just coming up on that. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Thank you all.
Great work, David.
Thank you. At this point, the chair will go ahead and call for a brief recess. According to the clock on the wall in here in the boardroom, it's about 8 till. We will reconvene 8 o'clock. 5 minutes to eat.
Well, it takes a lot to back to.
All right. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock.
Recording stopped.
minute after, so we'll go ahead and reconvene.
Recording in progress.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is presentation by the Twin County 911 Radio Project Update. Mr. Paul Holt, Emergency Services Coordinator, and Mr. Gary Bergeron. Okay, so
it's Gary Pash.
We have another Gary. All right.
Madam Chair and members of the board, appreciate the opportunity to do a brief on the status of the radio upgrade project. Also, while I'm here, if it is at the pleasure of the board, I can address the immediate things that we've been doing to address communication problems on the west end. I know that was a concern for Supervisor Vance. And so if you'd like me to address what we have done up to this point and kind of where we're at, I'm happy to do that.
I don't believe there is an issue with anyone. Go ahead, sir.
So very briefly, one of the things that we did as the agency leadership in Rugby has reassigned some radios. They basically took some of their newer equipment to make sure the ones that are responding from home with the biggest challenge in communications or have newer equipment. That has made some difference. We don't know. It's certainly not a solution to the problem. The other thing that we have done last month, we replaced the UHF antenna on White Top, and we replaced the coax cable associated with that antenna. And that has also improved somewhat. It doesn't improve reception very much, but it has improved somewhat the quality of communications. But again, it has not been a full solution either, and we didn't expect it to be. The other areas that we're working on, I got a quote this week. We are purchasing 5 new mobile radios that we're going to set up as base units, and the leadership of the agency is going to determine who needs those. We're going to put those in their homes for the ones that are responding from home, so they have better immediate communications both on the reception and the transmission end. Those are much more powerful than the portable units that they're using right now, and that will help as a short-term bridge while we work on the larger problem of replacing the infrastructure. And then finally, and this is very, very new progress, Sheriff Vaughn, who's a member of the Regional Radio Interoperability Task Force, contacted the landowner for Tower and Panther Creek to see if they would be willing to allow Grayson County to work off of that tower. That tower is in Smith County and it's operated by Smith County, but they had a restriction based on the landowner's desires. That landowner has given us a verbal approval and permission to co-locate on that tower. So we are currently working with Smith County Communications, and we don't anticipate a problem with them. We're working with them in White Top too, and they've been very positive. And it's already been kicked up to the management, the communications management for AEP, who owns that tower, to make sure that we have the engineering approvals and permissions from them. So there has been some progress made there. We haven't solved the problem yet, and honestly, we won't solve it until we replace the system. But we're doing everything we can, I think, reasonable fiscal restrictions that we have to work on some of those issues. That being said, I'll go ahead and move into our interoperability brief. As most of you know, the radio system that we have in Grayson County is, in every case, at least 20 years old, and much of it's older than that. We have some towers that some of the radio folks that we've been working with say they're familiar with from Vietnam era. So, and probably that's where some of the actual tower equipment came from. We did replace a lot of equipment and upgraded the system in 2008 and 2009. But even based on those improvements that were made, that equipment that was purchased then is now aged out and is no longer supported by manufacturers. So we're in a position where if we lose a piece of equipment for whatever reason, and lightning strike we recently had at one point looked at as a good example of that, we had $100,000 worth of damage and not a single piece of equipment except for one that they had to replace what's currently available as a replacement. So we're having to completely identify new equipment that can still work in that environment. The rest of our system is the same. So anytime we have a failure, we cannot replace like equipment. We have to find something new. We also have the problem with agencies having to find solutions. And that's one of the things that we love about emergency services, our fire and EMS agencies, our sheriff's departments, everybody basically has a mindset of we're going to get the job done. So we've got to communicate, and if they can come up with a way to do it, they're going to do it because we have to have that communication. The problem is when we have an agency here that's creating a solution for this problem and another agency over here that's creating a solution for this problem, and those solutions that they've created don't work together, we've created a new problem. And that's why we put together this task force to create a regional structure so that anything that any of us do is going to work towards a singular goal and improve our interoperability. We respond together. We don't almost never do one of our agencies respond by themselves. Whether it's a fire where we have a recent fire we had 7 agencies on scene. If it's a law enforcement issue, those guys do spend a lot of time out there on their own. But if it's a major event, then you have multiple agencies involved in those, multiple deputies involved. So being able to communicate across all the different tracks is very important for us. The Radio Interoperability Task Force is made up of communications folks and some of us who are not so much communications, but have a vested interest from the 3 jurisdictions. For Grayson County, we go Sheriff Vaughn, Gary Hatch, Chief Deputy Hatch, and myself. We have Sheriff Kemp, Gary Bergeron, and our Carroll County. We have James Cox, Chief Cooper, and Brenda from the GALAC side of things. And then we got Jolena that actually keeps all of us kind of moving in the same direction. So we appreciate all that. As you're aware, we did recently acquire a state Homeland Security grant to fund a regional strategic study. And we moved past that now to the first stage of the procurement process, which is where we're at this week. It's been a very busy week because we've had numerous vendors doing tower site evaluations for all 3 of the jurisdictions. And then yesterday we had our big conference. So we are making progress on that. Phase 1 is well on the way, and we'll continue to work that process. By summer, we should have a really good handle on what we want to do. We should have good information back from our vendors. And we should basically be in a position to start coming to you then and saying, how do we fund this? If you go to the next slide, Carl. The needs assessment strategic plan, the aging LMR system that we've got is, again, it's at the end of its life cycle. So if you think about it in terms of a vehicle, the older your vehicle is, the more it costs to maintain because parts are less readily available. The parts that you have are wore out. It just becomes more and more of an issue, and we start to have more failures. We also have a particular problem in Grayson County, Carroll County, not so much in GALAX, with coverage. And this is not a new problem. This really became more of an issue when they went from low band to the current radio system, and that was driven by the federal government. So it's not like we had a choice in it. But we started to have coverage problems then. Right now, there are large parts of the county, about a third of the county, where an individual deputy or a firefighter or an EMS provider with a portable cannot communicate with dispatch. So if you think about in terms of a sheriff's deputy serving a warrant or checking on welfare of a citizen or something like that, if something happens, they're not in their vehicle. That means a third of the time, essentially, that if something happens to them, they cannot communicate back to us. Same thing with our fire and our EMS folks. So that radio coverage is a huge life safety issue for all of our emergency services. We do have some channel congestion also. We don't have enough frequencies to be able to operate. Under normal traffic, we're probably okay a large amount of time, but anytime we have something coming up, especially involving multiple agencies, then we have channel problems. So we need to increase the number of channels and frequencies that we can operate on, especially during events. Our backhaul system, the system that connects everything together, we have a lack of redundancy in that. So if we have a single point of failure, it can actually take out our entire system. And we have had that happen. So Christmas a year ago, we had failure of 911 communications. And you can imagine the cost when you start to put a technician on the road on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, to deal with those issues, and including the fact that until they get there and can solve the problem, we have literally no 911 communications. And it's not like you can replace that with a cell phone for us either. So we have, there are times when we have complete blackouts. We also have this network management system, which means that if we have a problem in our system, somebody has to go up to that tower site, look at that equipment, and figure out what's going on. And it's got to be somebody who actually knows the equipment that it's doing. So it doesn't do any good to send me because I just don't have that back. And again, when we send somebody out on emergency rates for that, which is any any unplanned event, then it gets very expensive. I think we burned through the tower maintenance budget in about the first 2 months of this year. So what we're doing with this plan, we're creating some alternatives right now that both our vendors and our leadership will be able to act on. We basically are requesting our vendors provide 2 alternatives for us to look at. The first one is upgrading all of the jurisdictions to a interoperable LMR system, land mobile radio system, that is P25 compliant. P25 compliance is essentially shorthand for the current standard by the federal government for emergency services operations. P25 is the gold standard. It's also more expensive. So, but we do want them to give us a good recommendation for what they can do for us in a P25 system. Because it is expensive, we don't want to rule anything out. And if we can solve the problem in a less expensive manner and still have a good, safe, interoperable system, then we want to be able to look at that too. So the other thing that we're requiring our vendors to put forth is a non-P25 system, basically a conventional digital simulcast system that has a lot of the same functionality of P25, but it doesn't have the certification. There are some considerations with financing and grant eligibility for those 2 options too, which is another reason we want to go ahead and put both of them on the table. So I've mentioned when and how to make short-term repairs in a way to minimize short-term or interim expenses. The bottom line is every time we have to go out there right now, we are working on equipment that is at least 20 years old. And so we've got a lot of duct tape and baling wire. We're spending huge amounts of money on an hourly rate for them to go out there and work on a system that honestly, most of them didn't have in their homes. The benefits of what we're going to, the system that we will end up with at the end of this process, we're going to have a new current production land mobile radio system, including the microwave equipment. It's going to give us increased reliability and redundancy. We will have no single point failures anywhere in the system. We'll have improved coverage. There is no place in the county that won't have any coverage, unlike the current state of affairs. And in most places, over 95% of the county will have portable coverage, which means, again, that officer or that EMT carrying a portable radio on their hip will be able to communicate with dispatch or anybody else. That's very important to us. We're going to require less manual intervention by the radio user. Right now, as we drive across the county from one area to another, or from one agency's coverage to another, a lot of times we have to change channels, which means you have to remember what channels to change to. You have to remember where you're going, what system they're operating on. It creates a lot of potential for a mistake. And again, a mistake where during an emergency where you cannot communicate can be a lethal mistake. We want to reduce that. The same problem exists when we go across to our partners in Carroll County and the city of Gale. So by going to one regional system that's interoperable, it'll be transparent, which we'll be able to go anywhere within that system and communicate without having to reprogram radios, change frequencies, or anything like that we can kind of mess up. An IP-based backhaul system for all sites that gives us increased capacity and CAF reduction. So again, we're looking really strongly at this redundancy issue to make sure that we don't have any single point failures. And then finally, we want a network management system so that we don't have to send that technician going out there to figure out what the problem is from Blacksburg at $85 an hour from the time they get there, for the time we take the call. They'll be able to, at that point, if we have a network managed system, they can basically go online, look at the system remotely. And in a lot of cases, they can even do corrections or adjustments remotely and never have to leave where they're operating out of. So that's important for us too. In the worst case, even if it is broken, we know it's broken, we know what's broken, we know how long it's going to take to fix it before they even get on the scene. So all of those things work with us. It's also going to give us alarm system. So when we have a piece of equipment that's failing, we'll know about it, hopefully before it completely fails. So it allows us to take preemptive action to repair the system. So this is a lot of stuff we're asking out of the system, and it's expensive. I think everybody realizes that. There are ways that we can save money by reducing some of these benefits, and we're obviously going to look at all of those. We're going to have everything on the table. We can look at different network management systems that are going to be, maybe we don't need a network management system from the beginning, something built in and a phased approach. Other things like that we can do to reduce immediate costs while we build out the system. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be getting further information on as we work through this bid process. We do want you to know that this is going to be an expensive process, but it's also going to be a process that's going to carry us through the next 25 years. So if we do this right, the system we have will last us for longer than probably any of us in the building are going to be working in. And that's what we want. We want to turn over a good system to the people that are coming along behind us. And that gives us plenty of time to work on the next phase, whatever that's going to be. I hope that I'm not a part of that process. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Gary Hash for the rest of the presentation. And I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Paul. Just give you a couple of figures. What Paul was talking about just a few minutes ago. For those coverage percentages for Grayson County currently, roughly, and I think you've probably already seen it. You look on the middle of that slide there. You can see in the middle of the slide, third, fourth row down. It's 97%, and that's mobile radios. 97%. That's the car radios, truck radios. Then you look there, it's 38. It dropped to 38% on the street with a portable radio. That's the ones that the officers would carry, or the fire department members, or the rescue squad. If you go inside of a building, that's when it really gets scary. It drops down to 8%, and that's countywide average. That's not just one section. That's countywide average. So that's pretty sad. But if you can look right there, Carroll County's got similar problems. There's 10%, so it's not just Grayson County. But with the P25 system, those figures go up. Of course, the mobiles go up to 99% coverage. Both fire rescue and law enforcement. The streets, portables on the street is up 75%, and portables in building coverage of portables goes up to 41%. Now that's a long way from perfect, but that's also a long way from that 8%. So it's a good increase. Same thing to go to a DMR system, which is, I compare DMR and P25. I say P25 is like a Lexus, DMR is more like maybe a Cadillac, I don't know. But the mobile coverage it stays right at 99%. And then our street side coverage on portable is 68%. And then in the building coverage is still 30%. So it's an increase, but not a great increase. But it's still better, a whole lot better than what we had. A couple of different places that we've looked for agreements from joint session. There you go.
I think I wasn't at the meetings. I think Mitch may have been from the joint session where they talked about the grants that are available. They have applied. Jolene may have helped me with that. The BRIC grant.
Yes. So we do have an application. We went through Carroll County to submit that. We are still, the state has engaged a consultant to work with us on the benefit cost analysis. So we'll know by the 26th whether we are still in the running for that BRIC grant. Then 12 million, yeah, 12.7. In total, it's 14.5. 12.7 million with a 5.9 million match, but that includes 10 years of maintenance. That said, it is a low probability. Virginia was the second least rewarded in the 2020 BRIC funding, so that they actually have a list of the lowest application success, and Virginia was second on that list. So it is a long shot, but if we do get it, then you know, it would be a significant progress. We're also looking at Rescue Squad Assistance Fund grants. And of course, we'll go for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management grants as well.
I'll give you the figures that Federal Engineering has gave us during their study. And this is just very preliminary figures as estimates that, and from what they've told us, it's somewhat maybe on the high side estimate. We talked about on the P25 system, $2 million just for the equipment. The backhaul equipment is 1.5 million. Network cost is 267,000. Site improvement is estimated at 656,000. The subscriber units, and that's the mobile units that goes in the vehicles, and the portable units that everyone carries, and that's $1,062,000. And that's P25 project, and that totals $5.5 million. That's not including the dispatch, and dispatch had to be updated as well because that changed. Dispatch, the existing system that they have will not function with a P25 system. It's on its last leg now. It's put in in 2008, I think, and it's served its life cycle. It's running on band-aids now, but that cost is $490,000. So, and that's for P25 system. If you look over there for DMR, it does go down a little bit. The total cost of it is $4 million, and then $440,000 for dispatch. Maintenance, you can see the maintenance is a little bit cheaper for the DMR as well, for a 10-year maintenance contract. It's like about almost $5 million difference, or excuse me, $500,000 difference. But
and one notation I'll add on that, Gary, is the 10-year maintenance includes repair and replacement and purchase of additional subscriber units. So that includes repairs to those as well.
Like you told me that, because I didn't know that. That's pretty much all I have. Our goal is to just to improve the communications. It's slow. It's just like Paul referred to. It's kind of like a vehicle. I mean, the older the vehicle gets, the more it costs and the slower it gets, and the less dependable it becomes. Same thing happens on calling out spent last or spent Tuesday and today, going all over the county, from one end of the county to the other, doing site tours for the bidders for this project. And they've had some interesting comments about our system, and I've learned a lot from all these people that I've met in the last 6 months, really. But it's a challenge. I know it's an expensive undertaking, but I'm going to have to one way or another going to do it in some shape or fashion. We can no longer solely rely on the volunteers to pay for these projects like this. Rugby has their own radio tower that they put up in probably the late 80s, early 90s. And it's a tower that needs a lot of attention going there, but it's a very vital part of the fire rescue system. So I mean, that's just part of it. We can't expect, Rugby to spend $250,000, $350,000 put in the new tower and all that equipment to put on it as well. So I mean, that's just not possible. That's too many hot dogs for sale. So, and it's not just Rugby, it's from one end of Grayson County to the other. Hill Creek, all the way down Haywood Creek. So that's all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'll go in. Thanks.
In this cost estimate, does that address the radio problems with all agencies in the county?
Yes, yeah, that's entire. That's fire rescue, law enforcement, the whole, everyone.
All emergency services.
All emergency services.
If I might interject what I know about it, interviews and were done with different agencies. They came here to the firehouse and they shared their issues and concerns. Their, what areas where coverage wasn't. I think the study that was tried to, Grayson County, they tried to tailor specific needs for what the equipment would have to do to Grayson County. So I think it tried to address different agencies' issues.
And one good thing is vehicle repeaters. I don't want to get too technical, but that would be a very good win for everyone, law enforcement, fire rescue, but it don't cure all the problems. You gotta have a vehicle repeater, like I said, it's in the vehicle, and if you're just in your personal vehicle, that's not helpful. So you gotta be within, I think it's about a mile, 2 miles of that car, that vehicle's got that repeater. So that's going to be a win for everyone if we can establish those, and most of the vehicles, not all of them. We've got a couple of sheriff's offices, 1 or 2 in fact, they work really well. That's just one of the things that we can improve on. They're about $3,000 per vehicle.
I know in the early 90s there was an attempt to use repeaters and short speed and things, and I'm sure the technology and the digital systems far surpass that. I know there was a lot of issues with the repeaters, just where you got around the car.
Interfere with other vehicles. Yeah.
I appreciate your service, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, hello.
I thought you went to sleep on us.
No.
All right.
The Gary or Paul, either one, the propagation maps that were used to come up with the estimates for coverage, I know they take into account into account geography, but what about trees and foliage? Because the system you're describing is a digital system that I think we're moving away from analog going to digital. Does the estimates that you know right now, does that account for the trees and the foliage?
As it was explained, I'm not a communications expert, but as it was explained to us during the process that when federal engineering was producing these maps, it does account for that. It also accounts for basically just a difference between spring or summer and winter with the foliage. But also not only that, but also I guess the amount of wind that we have in different seasons was considered. There's a lot of things that were looked at. But again, one of the things that we have to be careful with is that those maps are created electronically. They're using the what appears to be a really good system. So one of the things we found when we actually brought the agencies into the room is sometimes what that computer program said and what the troops on the ground say is a little bit different. So we kind of take those maps with a grain of salt and use them as a guide, and then we're going to verify very, very carefully.
But do you think those estimates are on the conservative side, or do you think they're on the, you know, the rosy side?
Federal engineering believes that they're on the conservative side.
Okay. So the troops on the ground, when they went out and did the surveys, their numbers were coming back a little bit better than what the estimates were off of the digital map.
Yes. What we anticipate getting out of the system with the digital system, we will get better than what we're getting right now for sure. And again, honestly, they gave us, I think, a 94% on the street portable. And they said that in truth, that it'd be very likely that depending on the vendor and the system that they build out, we can probably do better than that. But they did a conservative estimate to give us something to work with and be able to hold their feet to the fire with. And Jolena?
Yes. One thing I will add to that, John, is in the functional specs and RFP that we sent out, part of the acceptance process is that the vendor has to test and prove that we're getting that level of coverage. So it's within the RFP that they have to actually demonstrate to us that they've delivered that the coverage that is required by the RFP.
Okay. The last question is on the estimate, or I mean on the comparison slide, you talked about sites, and I'm assuming these sites have towers associated with them, right? There's got to be something constructed to be able to put the equipment on to be able to meet the transmission requirements. Is that fair?
Yes. So in their proposal, they came up with, they focused primarily on existing sites. So the majority of them there are 2 proposed additional sites for Grayson County. So that was included in the estimates. Now, when the vendors look, they may determine that they need less sites than federal engineering has proposed, or they may determine that they need more sites. So until we get the proposals back on March 31st, you know, a lot will change when we look at the individual proposals, and we'll have a lot more information then. But for the estimate and the functional specs, they have provided a list of what they think are the most probable towers to use. And the majority of those do exist, but may need some improvements.
Okay, I would ask for y'all to take back to the board or the commission. You know, when we started down the road with communication infrastructure improvements for the county, there were three legs to that stool: broadband, cellular, and first responders. And we're addressing broadband. It sounds like you've got a pretty coherent plan on how you're addressing first responders. But if we're having to build towers to support the first responder communication network, I would ask that we consider the requirements for adding cellular technology to that tower so we can expand that network at a minimal cost. It may mean that we have to increase the construction strength of those towers, but I'd rather go down that road than to not consider that there are other components of communication in the county that we need to see if we can, address at the same time, if that makes sense.
And I'll check the document and see if that was included in the functional specifications. If not, I'm working on an addendum now where initially they were required to do a P25 and then they could submit an alternate proposal. We changed that so they can submit either or. So as part of that addendum, I can add this in as a requirement if they have to build a tower.
Yeah, because the tower ordinance in the county requires space be reserved for government or quasi-government organizations. So just please consider that. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Okay. Thank you all very much for your presentation. Next, Gate Center update, Mr. Rebecca Roberts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Rebecca Roberts is the facility manager at the Gate Center, and we were excited about having her come over and give you an update on all that's going on. She is ill, unfortunately, so she has asked if the board would consider letting her come back in February.
That's on that.
Okay.
Okay. Which brings us to Mr. Shepard, presentation on the Baywood Tech Phase 1.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When we look at the Baywood School, there are three things that we're working towards establishing in the school. One is the healthcare component. Another is the high-tech education center. And the third is childcare. The healthcare component is ready to roll. It's just waiting for the building, their piece of the building to be ready and to be occupied, and for us to work out the contractual agreements for the lease. The Baywood technical component of it is been going through a planning phase for a couple of years, and it's made considerable advancement there, but it's still in a planning phase. And you took a look at the child care component of it. The child care component is a hope that we can get a child care aspect into that building. There's no particular group that is providing that service or has stepped forward to provide that service. So what I wanted to do was come back to you and say, let's look at the Baywood School in 3 phases, with the first phase being the healthcare component. We have the money to do the healthcare component. This is Jim Worth, if those of you hadn't met him, he's the president of Tri-Area Community Health, which will be running this facility. So the money's available. He's actually lined up people to work there, and they've done their budget, and they've interacted with the federal government to make sure that they've got their ducks in a row. That piece is ready to go. And so what I've asked the contractors to do is to come in here in February and present you with that phase 1 cost, just with the healthcare component. So we can take this piece by piece and have you evaluate it piece by piece. So we don't put the whole critical part up because it's attached to the other 2. So what I've asked the contractors to do is to come back in to talk to the board in February, specifically about costs related to the healthcare component. And that's where it stands with the second.
Promotion.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for you I guess I'm looking for a motion for you to say you're okay with addressing this in a 3-phase manner rather than one project, that we look at it phase by phase, and that the first phase we look at is healthcare. We're ready to roll on it if the board feels comfortable in February, what we would be hoping for is that when we come in February, that you could listen to the presentation, get your questions answered, and be ready to say, we're ready to go with the healthcare component. He's got everything set to move if that happens. And then we continue to do our planning and evaluation of the other two phases as we move forward. So rather than coming here today and ask you to approve all three phases, what I'm trying to do is to break it into components.
So as far as the healthcare component goes, and this is a free clinic, as I understand it, FHQ, what you elaborate?
Yeah, it's a. Do you mind if I ask that's the guy, the main guy? Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yes, please. Thank you for your question. Jim Worth, Tri-Area CEO. So we're a federally qualified health center, which means that we get some funds from the federal government so that we are not technically a free clinic, but we don't turn anybody away because of inability to pay. So we offer what's called a sliding scale, which means that we accept people with insurance, pay the full amount, accept people with Medicare or Medicaid, pay the amount negotiated with those. But then if somebody doesn't have insurance, and so they're self-pay, if their income is low enough that they can't afford to pay the full amount, then we look at their income status and we'll lower our fees for them. And if they can't pay anything, then we have a hardship level as well. So we can sort of operate like a free clinic for some people, but for most people, it's either Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, or pay some percentage of the fee.
This such as what we have. Is it in Troutdale?
We are the same organization,
right?
So it's the same. It would be the same setup as in Troutdale, yes.
And so, what would be the difference in this clinic versus the Twin County Free Clinic that's in Galax? This serves Grayson and Carroll Galax.
So a free clinic is limited to who they can provide services for. So I don't know about that free clinic in particular, but many free clinics won't even take people with Medicaid. So they would just take 100 or so people who don't have any insurance, don't have Medicaid, can't afford anything. Those folks would go to the free clinic. They could also come to us, but they would go to the free clinic. The free clinic would not accept anybody with Medicaid. Perhaps
the
not with
Medicaid. Free clinic
Medicaid.
in Galax does accept Medicaid.
Medicaid. Okay, so then they wouldn't accept Medicare or private insurance. So then we would be accepting those folks, and we would accept anybody from Galax or Grayson County who came to our sites. I don't know about who the free clinic would accept.
Right. It's my understanding, and I was just over there this week talking to them. So they will, if you're not insured, you're eligible if you have no insurance, and anyone who has Medicaid. And the reason they accept Medicaid, my understanding, is because right now there's a backlog of people not taking Medicaid patients.
That's true.
So they're seeing those folks too.
Okay.
So they provide that. And I guess my question from here would be more direct back to Mr. Shapley. But if we have this service within 6 miles of Baywood, I'm still not sold on why we should continue to pursue this investment.
Well, as you and I have discussed privately, there's a pharmacy piece to this that will dramatically help the people of Grayson County. And having served on both the free clinic board and on the board of Tri-Area Community Health, they're really radically different. The array of services offered through Tri-Area is much broader and much more comprehensive. But I think one of the greatest things that people will get in this county out of this is the 403B pricing for pharmacy.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and we looked at
the distinction's critical, you know.
The pharmacy numbers, we talked discussed that a little bit, and I know you're going to give me some more information soon, but the pharmacy numbers would really go down with population over, I think you said 60% were eligible for pharmacy. So that means 40% of the population are already, they go ahead and get it at Walmart or wherever they get it traditionally.
And then once you start going from the 60% down to the 1%, there you see the steps in the discount. So in other words, people in 50, 40, 30 going on down, they're not getting the same discount as the ones at the bottom who may be getting a full discount. Is that a correct assessment?
If depending on the income level and then whether there's medication assistance programs out there, right, that would impact the amount that somebody would pay. It would be the same sort of idea with the sliding scale, depending on income and eligibility status. There would be a discount on lab prices, medical services, behavioral health services, and pharmacy. Right. So we do offer more comprehensive services than the free clinic does because we get that additional support.
Right. And it's my understanding that the Twin County Free Clinic, they have some programs in place too where they can assist with pharmacy. So I discussed some of that with those folks down there just a couple of days ago. It may not be to the level or the extent that you guys have because you're federally funded. They're a nonprofit. They operate off of donations and charities and churches and that type of thing. And I think we even maybe as a county give them some funding.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So that's just something I feel like should be maybe investigated more before we, bite off a big chunk and, go invest in a building. And so I guess the underlying question is, what is your numbers look like? Like in the Troutdale area, are you guys seeing a significant number of people, or is that, and it's the same at Laurel Fork and Floyd and so on?
We see about 10,000 patients a year for about 40,000 visits a year. The federal funding is about 25%, 20 to 25%. So most of the rest comes from patient revenue and the pharmacy and some grants. So I don't hear you, and I can't speak for the free clinic, but out at the Troutdale site, she's seen about 200 people a month, so that's about 2,400 visits a year out there. That wouldn't be happening otherwise, and I can't say that they would be the same numbers, but I would estimate that we would be seeing significantly more than could be seen at Twin County.
Right. I guess, and I think the work that you guys do in the Troutdale area, and that is they are further outreaching for as far as healthcare. But in the Baywood area, we're looking at 6.5 miles from a hospital, several doctors, and an actual free clinic. So I'm still, I'm not got moved on it, but that's neither here nor there.
Supervisor Anderson, you think about, especially in this time period, most people have to wait about 2 months to see their doctor. There is definitely not enough healthcare being provided. If people have to wait 2 months just to have a problem and need to see somebody, this gives another avenue for people to be able to get healthcare. So it's really hard to think about
healthcare, like seeing a cardiologist or
no, just to get doctor's appointments. We're seeing people that are 1 to 2 months out from when they call in. If they haven't been, like they're got the regular doc and they're calling in, there's a healthcare shortage all throughout the country. So it would be a shame for us to pass up a not-for-profit opportunity to be able to provide healthcare in the area that has been designated by the federal government as being underserved.
And I'll just say that part of the arrangement would be that there would be a lease agreement. So the amount that the county puts in from the grant funding that the county has received for healthcare that goes in, we would be coming up with a lease agreement to pay back that money. So it would not be as if the county is giving us $200,000 and telling us to go about our business. We would be entering into an arrangement to pay back that money over a period of time so that the county, the people benefit and the county ends up getting its money back. So it's an investment in the future.
General Act is turning away patients every day. They can't see them all because there's not enough healthcare facilities, and I know that for a fact. My wife's a nurse, and they're turning away patients. Can't see them enough.
We're required by our grants to have same-day appointments. So somebody could call, you could call in the morning and say, I need to come in, and we would be required. We'd have a certain number of appointments set aside to be required to see people on that same day. So that we could hopefully help not only with the long-term issue, but also with immediate needs.
So do you have any facilities that maybe are lacking it, like that are slow? I know everybody's overwhelmed right now with appointments and service. Do you have any facilities that their numbers are down and they're in that kind of situation?
We have capacity at all of our sites because we had built up before COVID, and then COVID has impacted. And so we've actually shifted some of our appointments to video visits so that we can see people across sites. So for example, Jane out at Troutdale, she'll sometimes see people in Laurel Fork if we don't have enough capacity there, or somebody in Laurel Fork, if she's too busy, we'll have somebody in Laurel Fork see somebody out there. So we have enough coverage across sites using technology so that we are not turning people away. We have capacity to be able to see people and to cover for other sites. Our behavioral health folks have become busier, so there can be sometimes a wait for them because there's been such an increase in need in behavioral health. That may be one area where there's a difference between what Twin County offers and what we can offer.
Telemed, is that?
We offer telemed, yeah, and we offer and case management, diabetes education. We have a nutritionist. So we offer a wide variety of services through both in-person and through technology.
What about mental health? Do you guys cover, what services do you offer for mental health?
We do. We have psychologists, social workers, counselors, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, a psychiatrist, a case manager. We do counseling, we do assessment, we do substance abuse treatment. We're starting to look at medication-assisted treatment for people with opioid addiction. So we probably have one of the strongest behavioral health programs of all the federally qualified health centers in the state. We just got national recognition for the behavioral health piece.
So you can offer those services at all your locations, whether it's telemed or in person?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, for sure.
Yes, Jim. Yeah, back to the request. I make a motion that we move to go to phase 1 and work on that section and have our contractors come in in February.
Yes.
And tell us what's going to cost to get them going, so we can move on to phase 2.
So are we approving just to do the phase 1? We're not actually approving the monies because we don't know actually what the monies are. Is that?
Well, we're waiting for them to give us, that's the number that they'll give us when they come back in February. Yeah, we're approving, letting us break it into phases and having them address the cost in phases too.
Which will require a separate approval.
That's right.
Okay. If I may, I talked with Mr. Powers, the attorney, and I think the issue is that the contractors can't do a change unless you send it back out to bid. So the issue is that you have to be able to talk to the contractor to then have the change. So I think if you're exactly right. So if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my understanding is that in order for there to be a change, you either need to accept to talk to a specific contractor, say the low bidder, accept talking to the low bidder, and then that allows that low bidder to come back in February and give you a change to just do the healthcare piece. But without that, you have to send it all out to bid all over again on just the healthcare piece. Because then anybody else would say, it's not fair, we could have come in at a lower price too. So I think that's the thing that, if I understand what Mr. Powers was telling me before, because I have a vested interest in this, that's what we need to happen tonight, is that there is an acceptance of a contractor, and then the contractor will come back with the actual phase 1 bid next time. That's my understanding. I don't know. How that goes. So, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure.
We have a motion before the board. Does anyone need restating of the motion before vote?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I'm not clear if we're bidding for a contract or we're bidding to put it in phase one.
Okay. There's been a request for restating of the motion. The clerk, do you have that?
Say again.
The clerk is prepared.
Supervisor Belton moved to go to phase one and work on that section, have a contractor address the board with the cost for phase one at our next meeting in February.
Did you hear that, Supervisor Frank?
I heard it, but I'm not necessarily clear based on what was said. If what I heard was said, we're approving the contract, but then we're making a motion. We're approving the contract, but then also saying we need you to come and tell us how you're going to break it into phases. Is that right? Yeah. Because do I have that right? You're asking us to approve the construction contract.
Mr. Fan, I believe what it would state that this piece of it would just be establishing the phase, and then we'll go ahead and proceed.
You would be accepting the contractor, but not the bid.
That's not the motion, as I understand it. The motion is that we're going to agree to do this in phases, and we're going to agree with you to begin the process of phase one. And as I looked here at this thing, if we're looking at 1.4 million, and I'm not sure what phase that falls into. If that's what's on the table, we need to.
That's the entire cost.
That's the entire. Of which phase?
Mr. Chairman,
of all three phases.
Yes,
May, the way I'm understanding this is if we don't approve to break this up in phases, we have to go back through the bid process again.
Right.
And if we break this up into 3 phases, we can start the process of approving the money for the contract for phase one. This is just approving the Baywood phase one. We as a board have to physically break it up into 3 different phases unless we want to go back through the bidding process. That's the way I'm understanding it.
I'm not opposed to going back through the bidding process, but I'm not, you're saying that this is 1.467 million is the low bid that I'm looking at. And that's only part of the first corridor as I read it on the information that we have. That doesn't include the upstairs, the gym, or the cafeteria as I see it. So how could that 1.4 million be all 3 phases and then we're voting to break it up? I think we need to go back to the drawing board and figure this out. This is a lot of money. And I'm not saying I'm 100% opposed, but I think where we're at is I'm confused as everyone else is, I guess, as to how that could be all 3 phases, but it only covers part of the building. If all 3 phases is the educational component.
Well, just remember that all 3 phases don't include the entire building. So they never included the entire building. So that, just for clarification.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Now I'm more opposed to this motion.
Now you're what?
I said I'm more opposed to the motion if all 3 phases doesn't include the entire building as far as the construction component.
Okay, at this point, we have a motion before the board. Before any further discussion, if everybody's clear on the motion.
I am not clear. Are we spending 1.4 million if we vote yes right here tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you.
A second.
Okay, you have a motion and a second before the board. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. I also aye.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We've been passed with a pretty heavy agenda tonight. Looks like there's no old business on the agenda. Moving on to new business. Real estate assessment extension request was covered already. That brings us up to board appointments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have for the Ag Advisory Committee, we have an application from Henry R. Sturkey III and an application from Gary Mitchell. They're both from the Wilson District. You want to take these the whole thing?
I believe that due to the length and the number of appointments, that we could just go ahead and do each item, each committee.
Okay.
And then, is there any discussion on any of this?
I'll just have some. I couldn't find the list here. I had a hard copy, and I'm still having a hard time navigating there. But there's the is it too late to add the Twin County Free Clinic used to have representation from this board, and when I met with those folks this week, they said they would like to have that again. I am willing to serve on that board if it be the pleasure of this board that we have someone serve for it. I would just like to put that on the table.
On the Ag Committee?
No, it's the Twin County Free Clinic.
Okay. I believe at hand there was a discussion of the Ag. Okay.
Was it? Well, oh, we were going by list. I thought you were going. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go down and we'll do each one individually. I thought we'd be more progressive, a lot better than Lifepak. Okay. I have a motion to accept these. Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Signify by aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Next, for the Board of Equalization, Danny Boyer for the Providence District will be unable to serve, and I think Supervisor Anderson has nominated Ty Kennedy. Is that correct?
Yes, I talked with Ty, and he's willing to serve on the Board of Equalization. He's an outstanding, I think we do a good job.
He's in Providence.
He's in Elk Creek.
Yeah, there may be some confusion here because Mr. Boyer, there was 2 representatives from the Providence District. There was no one that was represented on the Board of Equalization from the Elk Creek District. So I surrendered the other position to make it fair.
I didn't know the amounts on all
that. That's why why it's worded like that. So in order to make it a little equally spread out across the county, you'll be on my position. Okay, so we'll just pass on that till you have an opportunity. Oh, you said Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, Ty Kennedy is. I've talked with him. He's agreed to do that at the pleasure of this board.
And also, Mr. Chairman, I had spoken to Supervisor Ivy and Supervisor Fan about someone to represent the other position. I don't know if they've had time to act upon that yet.
Okay. We'll pass on that one. So with Mr. Anderson's recommendation of Mr. Kennedy, do I have a motion?
Well, I motion it.
I second. Okay. All in favor? Also,
okay. Thank you. Next one is Carol Grayson Solid Waste. We need to appoint a Board of Supervisor member to fill the remainder of Brenda Sullivan's term, which would end on 12/31/23. So we don't have any recommendations at this point.
Does that require a supervisor or a citizen?
Yes.
I would be willing to do that if it's one of the board.
I'm on Nate Zeke Anderson.
Okay.
He said that too quick.
We have Nomination and a second. All in favor, by signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. For Cleo's, it's a 1-year term. This appointment is for a board supervisor member only. We need to appoint a representative and an alternate representative. This is Marty Holliday's group, right? And can you tell them a little bit about what that group is?
Chief Local Elected Officers, and it is workforce development. It's a board it's always been the chairperson of each county of 13 counties. And they're all thrown in there plus once every 2 months. It's usually a 4-hour meeting. But it's mostly workforce development.
So traditionally that's been our chairperson or sit on that. Well, I'd like to nominate Mike Hatch if we were to continue that tradition.
Right. No second.
Have a vote for myself on this Cleo's board.
No,
We'll go ahead and have a nomination for alternate.
Does that have to? I don't have to be the vice chair.
Well, I was suggesting that it might already be, but it doesn't. I mean, it was at the time.
Is that the tradition?
I've been on it 10 years older, I guess. But
would you like to stay on, Mr. Bill?
I would say Mr. Fant would like to have that, but I wasn't sure.
Are you still there?
I second the motion for not Mr. Fant.
Any objection, Mr. Fant?
Is this for the alternate position?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. Have 2 nominations. Take the vote. These were presented. All in favor, signify by aye. Opposed? Also aye.
Okay. And for the CSA Family Management Policy Team, Tom Revels was the alternate for Mike Cash. This term expired on 12/31/22. This can be someone from anywhere. It doesn't have to be a board supervisor. Right, Linda? So I don't have any nominations at this moment.
Tell me what they do.
CSA CPMT is years ago, back in the 90s, there was a CSA fund set up. It's a Child Services Act. I think it was during the Wilder administration. We set up a pool of money from different resources. This team is responsible for allocating those funds to children in the county with special needs or foster care. They're also related to foster care and school IEPs that the school has deemed necessary for certain children and individuals. And so a FAT team discusses what treatment or resources need to be available to these children in need. And then upon those recommendations, the CPMT board gives the approval or disapproval for the use of those funds.
And how often do they?
Once a month. Some need third Thursday. I chair that board, so I'm usually.
Well, if we don't have anyone on this board that's interested in that, maybe we pursue it. Citizen.
Wait for nominations for next one. Okay.
Okay.
can table on that.
Table that.
So District 3 Governmental Cooperative 1-year term. Brenda Sutherland's term expired on 12/31/21. And Elizabeth Jones, the alternate, expired on 12/31/21. She has expressed an interest in continuing. I don't have a, or do we? We don't have a recommendation for someone to fill Brenda's slot at this moment.
Does that have to be a board member as well?
That does not have to be a board member.
Okay, we'll pass on that one with Ms.
Okay.
Jones.
She's agreed to work as an alternate, so I guess she can keep doing that till we find the.
Okay.
So we'll pass on.
And maybe she'd be interested in not being the alternate.
Yeah. I'll reach out to her.
If she would reverse roles, I would be the alternate. I wouldn't mind. I would get
Okay. Thank you. DSS Department of Social Services 4-year term. Brenda Sutherland has. Let's see.
She's great to be a member.
She's interested in being the member for the 4-year term.
Make a motion to appoint Brenda Sutherland as local DSS board member.
Second.
We have first and second. Ready for vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All any opposed? No. Okay. I also aye.
Thank you. Mount Rogers Community Services Board. Tom Rebels resigned from this board, and we need to appoint a new representative. So his term expired 12/31/22. So that will be this. It's got 1 more year of a 3-year term that we're looking for somebody to step in and take his place.
He resigned.
Yes.
Yeah. Which one is that?
That's the Mount Rogers Community Services.
Okay, so I would be willing to serve on that board if we discuss that with the legal to see if there's no conflict. And if there is a conflict, then I would suggest it be a fellow board member.
That's good.
Pass on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mount Rogers County District 4 Commission. 4-year term. Tom Rebels' term will expire on 12/31/23. He would like to continue to serve as a citizen of the county if you all would like him to do that.
Have a motion to have a second.
I'll say.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Okay. I also aye.
Okay. Mount Rogers PDC Transportation Rural Technical Committee. 2-year term. Brenda Sutherland's term expired on 12/31/21. Amber Schuler, who's the alternate, term expired on 12/31/21. She's indicated she'd like to continue to serve. The position does not require that that it would be a supervisor, right, Linda?
Correct.
Bill, you said that Ms. Sutherland would continue to serve, willing to serve?
Not for what I have right now. Did she indicate to you before she left?
I thought that was the one that put it on down.
That's the
PDC.
Yeah. No, it was the
DSS. No, not what Brenda was. Community Service Boards, Planning District Full Commission, and PDC's all together. Or it's not together, but
right.
I thought that's what we were talking about earlier.
So which specific board are you talking about?
I'm talking about Mount Rogers PDC
transportation.
Yeah.
It's confusing because everything's called out right.
Okay.
So there's not a nominee to take Brenda's place at this time.
That would be another, talk to Amber and see if she would step up.
If she will step up there again, I would volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone good to pass on that?
Pass on that.
Okay.
All right, now public service.
Yeah, Public Service Authority.
Sorry.
The full board participates in that, and so that would mean advancing Brantley Ivy and Tracy Anderson to that, to the PSA.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. So aye. Okay. Moves us up to the county administrator's report.
I think we've had quite a bit to talk about tonight, so I'll have some more for you in February. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Registered speakers and public comments.
Just check. Can we take a 2-minute recess before we start with the speakers?
You ain't first, man.
I'm first. It's fine.
No, he's first. He's got to go.
I'll hold it. I'll hold it.
If you need,
I'll hold it.
No, I'm
She's
only got 3 minutes.
Okay.
I won't take 3 minutes.
Yes, and I'll just remind, and there may be still some in the lobby that are here to speak, that if you will limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you don't mind giving us your name, your resident address, and the topic you're here to speak with.
Okay.
Glad to have each one of them.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
One opinion, Elk Creek District, 9476 Elk Creek Parkway. And I'm here to address the board regarding the trash issue and also the Baby School project. I would like to say, welcome Mr. Ivy and Mr. Anderson to the board. Expect big things from both of you, and I hope that you'll be strong leaders. Okay, so just want to get that out of the way. I listened tonight on the Baywood project. I'm kind of like Zeke in that area. That's a lot of money to not complete the building. I mean, and then to hear all the issues with the EMS, what we need there. I can't see spending $1.4 million there when it is so needed to serve the entire county. But that's, I'd like to see it put to bed and leave it alone. The trash issue. On my AEP bill, I have a utility tax that was implemented years and years ago. Can anybody tell me what that tax is about? I was understanding it had something to do with trash, but if I'm incorrect, you can certainly let me know later. And I was going to print my utility bill out and bring it with me tonight, and just didn't have time to do so. But there's issues over there, and I understand that, but they're fixable issues. We need that open back up. I've used it every single week. I drop my plastics off there every single week. I might throw a little bag of trash in there. And I see there's always people there. And like I say, I know there's issues, but I think we need more visibility there as far as watching what's going on. Allegheny, which is where I'm from, has a little sticker that you get 2 per household. And you put it in your bottom left corner of your windshield. It shows that you are a property owner of Allegheny County. I don't know what it costs to get these. They didn't get back with me, and she said it might be next week. What it costs to produce these. But it's a very simple fix, because I've seen people go in there that I know doesn't own land here. And and they have North Carolina title. Now, people in North Carolina do own property here. But I know some of these people that I've seen over there, and they don't own property here. So we have some abuse to it. Still doesn't mean we don't need it. I mean, like I say, these are all fixable things. So I'm asking the board to bring that back, put it back on your agenda, and bring that back to us for Wednesday and Saturday morning. And extend the hours would be really nice, because it's hard for people in the outlying areas to get here in those hours that's specified. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Got a little back problem, y'all.
I know you posted.
My name is John Dickinson. I live in Deerwood Estates, which is right across the road from the Public Works manager. The manager, I talked to him in the hallway. I had a 2-page letter that I wanted to read to you all. But after speaking to him, he enlightened me on some issues. Obviously a good choice for management. But I still would like to see if you all reopen that and reinstate or open up the facility again, because it's a convenience to the citizens of Grayson County, permanent residents and seasonal residents. I put my trash out, the wild animals get to it, it's thrown everywhere. So I decided once that opened up, myself and 3 other families in my subdivision use it every week. And it's convenient. And we appreciate the convenience provided by the county. Well, like I said, I've got a lot of other reasons as to why and what for and cost, reimbursement, but also the people that drop off their trash. Almost every one of them bring recyclable items to the Public Works drop-off location. So the county is gaining money for the recyclable items without having to dig it up. I'm actually an employee of the county, free gratis, because I'm delivering my trash to y'all to pick up. And I don't have a problem with my $5 fee, because my trash is being dealt with, and that's all I ask for. But it's a huge inconvenience for, especially I would think, the seasonal people to be able to put their trash out and then get picked up without bad weather interruption and holidays. I'm sure they're not always there when their routes are followed for pickup. But the main thing I want to get across is this is a service that Grayson County provides for its citizens. And if it costs a little bit of money, with the tax increase that I just heard tonight, there's going to be money to pay for it. I know there is an abuse, but the abuse can be fixed. I do believe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Next, Mr. Joe Reeves.
Thank y'all very much. I'm Joe Reeves, 1146 North Independence Avenue. I live right below your facility. I'm a very close neighbor. I'm downwind. And I have no problem with the facility. They've been great neighbors. We get some trash once in a while. Yes, we will. But they're awfully good about going and picking it up. The bank, they're on the northeast side. They've mowed it and cleaned it up, and it looks really nice. I have no problem with that facility at all. I do have a problem with not being able to take the trash on Wednesdays and Saturdays. This is a need in this county. And if you'll go up there, I go up there around 10 o'clock or so in the morning, and you have two big boxes up there, two of the 30-yard boxes. They're full, or 3/4 way full by 10 o'clock in the morning. You've got a couple more hours, you're still, in business. And you can go up there, there'll be 8 to 10 to 12 people there coming in, circling around and going back out. I know some of the neighbors have got some trash on them, and I can understand that. You need more places to put your product, and your product is trash. Then I go down here and I talk to Travis down here at Grayson Express. He pays you for a dumpster, extra business. Sometimes he can't get his trash in a dumpster because other people have filled his dumpsters up. Firehouse is the same way. I'm a fireman, been a fireman for years. You go up there and we have a function at the firehouse, our dumpster's full. It's people come by and bring the trash. I actually believe you had a dumpster up here behind the courthouse at one time. And it was pulled out because people were using it to put their trash in. Does that not tell us we have a need? Yes, you do a great job. You all do. My hat's off to you all. I'm not going to fuss at this man because he does a great job. He does. I'm fussing because we're taking a need that the county has away from the taxpayers. Because if every dumpster that a business pays for or that is available is being filled up, if 4 30-yard containers are being filled up a week and overflowing, that's where your trash is blowing. When you get them too full, when you go above the line, the wind picks up, and the wind blows there, doesn't it? Then it's going to go somewhere, either on me or on Curtis Harrington or someplace. And being I'm downwind, I'd say most of it comes to me. We don't need to close this. You need to expand it. You need to open it up more hours. You need to have more storage for your product, which is trash. And you need to make this you make this available to the public because it's a need. And I'm sure I've skipped something. We don't need to go into the cost. Because I know that you're saying it's going to save $70,000. My minute's up.
Yes, sir. Well, I would like to hold you there for a second. We had a phone conversation. You mentioned some really good ideas on the phone about how to enter and exit the property. That had been some kind of a concern in that curve.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a question. It's what you.
I'll be as quick as I can be. Okay, John, he didn't take 3 minutes. The other fellow didn't. I'll take some of their time. Okay, but I promise I'll be as brief as possible. I'm not going to get with you. Yes, when the Pratt plant was there, we brought tractor and trailers in there. I know there wasn't as much traffic then as there is now. Why not make a circle drive around the thing? Come in the north entrance, circle around the building, come out the south entrance. That's probably going to mess up your operation some, but you're smart enough to figure out how to do it. That way your product flow is continuous, just like in manufacturing. You let your product flow be continuous. Your product lines don't cross each other. Now you're making a bottleneck right there in the entrance. Can I make one more statement here? Oh, this is something I need to ask you. Then you quit picking up my trash. I had to take it up there. I put my trash on the side of the road. So Tuesday afternoon, late, I put my trash in. I'm picking up at Wednesday morning, 7:30. My wife's sitting in her office, and she's looking out, and here the trash truck comes down the hill, and it picks up trash here, it picks up trash here, it picks up Freddie Hall's trash. Now my trash cans are sitting right there to my driveway. They go on down the road, they don't pick my trash up. Well, I'm easy to get along with. I don't fuss around too much ruckus, My wife just went off the back. Now, you need to go up there and see what's going on, man. They'll pick it up on the way back through. They didn't pick my trash cans up. I asked Skip, he said my trash can was too big. I had a trash can about this big and one about this big. Why not pick up the one that's the right size and tell me, Joe, you need a smaller trash can? You know, Saddle Creek, you had to use a bigger truck the last 2 weeks. Used to take that little ton trucks up to that. Now they're taking a bigger truck. You've got 120 extra yards of trash that you're gonna have to deal with. Pick up outside the county instead of being delivered to you. My time's up, so we're not going to talk anymore. Okay. But hey, please.
No, I appreciate it. When I guess when you're addressed, you get extended a little bit of time if you understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Reeves.
Rose,
I'm sorry. You kind of look like two E's put together there.
Elk Creek, 15 Discovery Lane. I exclusively, I would say 90% of the time I use Wednesdays and Saturdays. I have to drive a half a mile to Highway 21 to put my trash on the side of the road. I've had bears get in my trash. I have skunks in my yard. I have all these critters. So for me, it's easier to just drop it off and not have to worry about having my trash scattered all over 21. Also, I was a little annoyed because I didn't know that Wednesday and Saturday was done. You know, my husband went up there Wednesday. Well, maybe it's the snow. I went up there Saturday. No, and that's not open anymore at all. I go to the website, and even today I went to the website. It says that you're still taking trash on Wednesdays and Saturdays on your county website. So I don't know when it happened. I know when it happened, but I don't know particularly why it happened. I heard it was a few bad apples, people putting stuff in there that was supposed to be in there. I've seen the attendant make people take fencing out of the dumpster, so I know they're trying to be conscientious. And I see an attendant most of the time. Other counties seem to manage their trash with drop-off trash. It was really too dry for me to burn my trash this year, so you know, I just really like the Wednesdays and the Saturdays. If we don't, speaking of the man that was putting the fencing in there, if we don't trust our citizens to do the right thing to put stuff in the dumpster correctly, they're going to just be throwing it all up. You're going to have illegal dump sites everywhere. You're going to have trash where there shouldn't be trash. So I would really impress upon the board to please reinstate the Wednesdays and the Saturdays. And if you don't, I would like to have a reduction in my trash fee that I pay on my property taxes of $216 a year if you're going to discontinue the service. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. David Charles.
He's left. He give up.
Okay. Then Mr. Darrell Ward.
He did the same thing. He bailed.
All right. Mr. Kenneth Scott.
659 Thomas Rock Road, Elk Creek, Virginia. Joe pretty much covered everything I was going to say. One other thing I would put into that is that the ability to drop off metal, which is very recyclable, and there's a place for it. There's computer parts that, you know, people drop off monitors, computers and stuff and puts it there. It's all stuff that's very recyclable, and if you have someone tear them down inside those computers, there's expensive type minerals that you can get out of. But the main thing that is, this has been around for over 15 years. Remember, it used to be right down here in the across from the old sheriff's department, and went on. And then when they opened up Public Works, they opened it up out there. And then to just turn it off was like this lady said, you know, it was a shock, because my driveway's 1/10 of a mile long. If I'm gonna load that stuff on the back of my truck, I might as well bring it on because I'm coming to Independence anyway. I'll dump it in there. So that's it. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that maybe in one of these meetings, that instead of us sitting around for all of your all's business, we might get in here first, and then you all can do your business, and the ones that wants to stick around for it, sticks around for it. You know, it would make sense to me, but maybe not to you. And the last thing is for Baywood, I spent 25 years in the technology field. I've worked for some pretty serious companies, and I also worked over at Sparta in their little incubator, and they had a technology center in there. It wasn't to teach technology, but they actually went around and repaired computers in there. It was a money-making thing. And my question would be, is the technology center going to be a white elephant that the county continues to pour money into, or is it a money-making experiment? You know, is it going to produce? The healthcare part sounds like it's going to pay you back. Possibly the child care, because I know there's a lot of grants and stuff and federal aid for child care. But the technology, it kind of gets at me that in Baywood, who's going to Baywood to be a technology wizard? Not to be facetious about that, but you know, what are you offering, and is it going to make money? And that's pretty much everything I had. But those are my questions. I'm with Mr. Anderson there. It's a lot of money for a basement to be reconstructed, and what's coming out of it? You're getting the money back on the medical end, I see that, and possibly on the child care. But the technology part, that's going to be a big outlay right up front for just your equipment. And what are you going to do? What are you going to teach? You know, those are things I'd like to know. I mean, are you teaching DBAs, or are you just teaching some guy how to load a piece of software on his computer?
Thank you. Okay, I believe that's everybody that's signed up. Oh, yes. There is one that was submitted. Well, with them funky readers, you go ahead. This is one that was submitted. Go ahead and state.
This came in via email. It's Todd Kennedy. I don't know his address. I know he lives in the Oak Creek district, but he submitted this earlier today, and I'm going to read this on his behalf. These are his words, not mine. To whom it may concern, I would like to officially express my concern and displeasure in shutting down the trash drop-off on Wednesdays and Saturdays at the waste management facility. Since the inception of this service, I have seen a community effort and pride in keeping our community clean and less trash piles over the banks on our secondary roads. I hate to see a knee-jerk reaction to problems that can be resolved by good management. This situation does not have to be all or nothing. Please consider taking measures at the waste management facility, such as higher fences, better traffic flow, more dumpsters to resolve the issues at hand. And I would think handling these issues at one location would be much less expensive and controlled than trying to manage 15,000 home locations. In essence, we are bringing you our trash and paying you to pick it up. Sounds like a good problem to work through. Concerned citizen of Grayson County, Todd H. Kennedy.
Mr. Smith, do you know of any other correspondence or anything?
No.
Okay.
I'll make sure nobody else is lined up. Nothing there.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we resolve this tonight by opening back up the dumpsters with extended hours and asking for home services.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just put my 2 cents in. The I think the discussion about convenience is an important one, but I think the bigger problem is volume, right? We're talking about volume because volume translates into cost, which is a budget issue. So ultimately, we've got to think about how we want to proceed with this service, which is a component of the overall trash collection program that the county has. Now, whether we do it at where it's currently located or we do it somewhere else, what the real issue is, because of volume, we're potentially talking about unintended consequences. And the unintended consequences right now, as we've heard a couple of people talk about, is the transfer of that collection of that garbage or trash at Public Works to our business owners and private owners who have dumpsters. They're now taking on the weight of this decision by the administration to close it with our consent. But we're also talking about the possible improper disposal of that volume, which used to be collected at Public Works. So we've got to figure that out. There's a cost. I mean, we all know that the cost of trash has gone up 25%. I mean, the volume of trash has gone up 25% from just because of the pandemic. So we've seen an increase in volume regardless of how we collect it. But even on the side of the volume, we've still got an issue at the facility about how we safely do it. If we continue to do it there, we increase the potential traffic flow in there, which causes other potential problems. And so I think my take is that I'm not opposed to reinitiating the program in some form or fashion, but I think there's got to be some work behind the scenes to how do we make it better and more sustainable. Because if we're trying to reduce volume, which translates into reduction of transportation and tipping fees, then we need to think about how do we do that. You know, and I think Jonathan would tell you, Looper would tell you that the moneymaker right now is in recyclables, cardboard, and then less so in paper and metal. So if that's some of the contributors to the volume, how do we increase, as somebody said, people are dropping off their recyclables there. How do we increase that? Because that ultimately reduces the volume. But I think we also got to consider maybe doing it at a different place than right there. And so I'm not opposed to restarting the program. I just think we need to give the staff time to come back with some recommendations on how we do it. That's my thoughts pending the vote on the motion.
All right.
Can you amend can we amend the motion to say we reinstate it and quickly start looking at ways to fix the original problem?
If I can address before we do that, John's concerns, because it sounds like the dollar issue was one of the concerns that I know the citizens have brought out. It was mentioned here earlier about the fee that APCO charges, the $3 consumer fee. It's a tax, actually, that was originated for trash collection by previous boards, something that you guys inherited may not be that well aware of. But it generates close to $400,000 a year. It's under $400,000, but close to it, in revenue for this county that goes into our general fund. That's one thing. But the other thing is with the recycling and the things those guys do out there, they do an excellent job. Trust me, I saw it firsthand. These are great guys, and we've got good leadership out there. But from the numbers that I looked at in the budget that Lisa gave me when I first got elected, so I went through and I looked at what's this cost and this overall salaries, the whole deal, and just preliminary numbers that I've got, it's $1.5 million that it's costing us. And it looks like the revenue generated from it is 1.6. And I know that could vary because some people may not have paid their fees. There's other things to figure out, but we're real close right there. This is probably the only department in the county that's actually producing when they're selling
plastic and whatnot. So I don't, the cost argument is not there. And as far as continuing to kick the can down the road, the citizens have made, I think, excellent ideas and statements to how Mr. Luber could move forward to enhance a few things around there. But I think extending the hours allows for more of the county residents to come in on Saturdays and Wednesdays, because that's been mentioned that we don't offer that at all other locations. So we extend the hours, we're going to be able to offer more to our citizens. The trash is going to Carroll County dump one way or the other. It's either being picked up by our guys or it's going to go in that dumpster on Wednesday or Saturday. So that cost is still there. So as far as the cost effectiveness, and there's a safety component, because if there's 4 big bins of trash out here that's full, that's a lot less these guys are on the side of the road picking up. And I'll give you an example. So when these guys are down here on the river, that they're seasonal residents, they put all their garbage up on 58 because we don't take our trucks down in there. So our guys have got to stand over on one of the busiest highways in the county and load, 50 bags of trash. That's a safety issue. But those folks typically, when they're here during the season, as I understand it, they utilize that on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So I think we've addressed all the issues. I don't see a need to kick the can down the road, and I want the motion to stand.
So you still second on that motion?
If we're just going to say we're not going to do continual improvement, I mean, that's the only thing I'm asking for in the motion, is that we open it back up immediately and start coming up with ways to make the service even better.
So the verbiage is so the motion is that we open it back up with expanded hours and with improved service, which can be.
We open it up immediately and start looking at ways to improve the service.
I can rest with that. I can agree with that too.
So that would be your restructured motion.
Restructured motion that we open it immediately with considerations of improvement.
Okay. That's right.
Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
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 I also aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Appreciate it.
That
Thanks
was
for
almost
2 hours here today.
That was worth 4 hours. Praise the Lord.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Just surprised they got rid of tonight.
Well, one day on
Are we adjourned?
Oh, I guess we might need to take care of that matter. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Same size as 3D.
Second.
So move second, third.
All in favor? Aye.
Recording stopped.
Carl.